Okay, we'll call the City Council public hearing December 19th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland? I think James Burton?
Here.
Ken Jones?
Here.
Jeff Gard?
Here.
Melina Meyer?
Here.
Ann Schaefer?
Here.
David Allison?
Here.
James Weiss?
Here.
That is a quorum and everyone.
Okay, thank you. Tonight's public hearing has 3 resolutions on it for consideration tonight. We've only scheduled 30 minutes for this time. However, with a 3-minute limit, we'll allow however many people that need to get through their comments to get through their comments. So don't feel like we're rushed in a half an hour. We'll start the regular meeting when our public hearing is over. Okay. So first item for the public hearing is resolution 12-18-33. This is the copy that is on the counter there, or for you if you grab that. It's not the one that's in the packet. There's a slight difference in numbers. The resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, adopting an operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2019 and appropriating the amount of $15,288,342 as summarized pursuant to the following table. The table is attached. Resolution 12-18-34, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, adopting city service fees, rates, and charges for the 2019 calendar budget. And resolution 12-18-36, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, reinstating the E911 surcharge implemented in resolution 081049, is it?
Yeah,
49, and repealing resolution 031220, which suspended the surcharge pending the acquisition and activation of an enhanced 911 system. So if you want to make comments regarding any of these 3 items, please come up to the mic. We have two folks on the phone that would like to hear your comments as well. Thank you.
Dave Gleason, 609 Cedar Street. I'd like to thank the council for volunteering and doing this job, because I know it's a tough one. I appreciate all of you guys for doing that. My first comment is on the school. I think that the school is the #1 attraction for people to move to this town. We've been given awards for our school. We have great teachers. It's a safe town to raise kids, and because of that, I think that it should be a top priority for the city council to fund them. I don't think you can put a price on having a great place for your kids to go to school. So if they're asking for money, they've got a good reason for it, and I think they need to be funded what they're requesting. And I apologize if I'm going to ruffle some feathers with my next comment. I understand we gave the city manager a bonus, and I'm not privy to all the information that you guys are, but from a citizen's standpoint, it's a direct slap in the face to have money go out like that when we cannot fully fund other things. And I know it's only $10,000, but it's 10,000 taxpayer dollars. So I'd like to just bring that up. Next, I think we should take advantage of a few taxes we're not taking advantage of. Alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana, if that store opens. And I don't think it's gonna change. People aren't gonna quit drinking if they have to pay a little bit more for their drink. I've lived here my whole life. A lot of beer goes through this town. I've looked at what the state charges. They get $1.79 per case of beer that gets sold in this state, which has got to be an amazing amount of money. The other one is I'd like to see us raise the bed tax to 12% if that's possible. I don't know if we're capped somehow with our sales tax and bed tax. But that's a way to generate revenue that does not impact any people that live here. And I think it would be about $130,000 extra dollars a year to do that. And sport fishermen that come here take our resources. They're not gonna not come here for 50 bucks more a week. These guys are all fairly well off. They can afford it. And if you ever stay at a hotel in Anchorage and look at your bill, check out the taxes you pay at a hotel in Anchorage. I think it's like 16% or something like that, because they have a borough tax on there also. And we're not allowed to comment on the borough right now? Okay. I got some things to say about that too. All right, thank you.
Susan, if you could run a timer and give them a 30-second heads up.
Good evening, Alex Rustin, 675 Second Street, that's my office residence. I'd like to speak briefly to Resolution 121833. 4 years ago, I did a school budget presentation to the City Council, first one that I ever gave, new to town, and the comment that I received was, wow, this is the first time that a superintendent's ever come to the City Council and not asked for money. My response to that was, we're asking for what we need. I've made that commitment to ask for what we need. I've sent several letters to council asking for what we need. Council members have stated, draw down your fund balance and come and ask for what you need. The district has done that, and we are committed to taking care of the kids the best that we can. Correspondence in the packet from me states that the city received $630,000 from the Secure Rural Schools Act in October. Our request for next school year includes an additional $400,000. I majored in English in college and not in math, so you'll have to excuse me if I try to simplify this for myself, but $630,000 minus the $400,000 for the ask still provides the city with some revenue. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheryl Gleason, 609 Cedar Street. Thank you all for your service to the community of Cordova. I can appreciate the decisions that are having to be made with the finances, and I do see that I recognize the challenge that you face. I want to make sure that you understand the position the school will be in if you pass the current draft budget. For the past 2 years, I have heard city council members tell the school district to use its fund balance to cover the shortage that the lack of full funding created, and that the city would be here to help when the time came. Well, that time has come. The fund balance cannot go above 10% of our budget, as I'm sure you are aware, but I'm not sure if you're aware that the fund balance shouldn't go below a certain level either. With the school's funding mechanisms for the title grants sometimes taking half the year to come in, it is the fund balance that keeps these programs running. It is irresponsible to continue this trajectory. The superintendent wrote to the city manager and council back in November to explain the school's needs, and yet it has not changed the draft budget. The amount asked for is the amount needed to sustain the level of education that Cordova has prioritized. Cordova School District will go without $400,000 that has been established as a need. We do not know at this time what that will end up looking like, but the rough math is simple. A teacher and their benefits runs us around $100,000. Classified staff, $70,000 to $80,000. Activities, $260,000. All this to say, a $400,000 shortage to the school will have a devastating effect. The school district has done its part for the past 2 years to help in the city's fiscal situation, but we all knew that that was not sustainable. Please fund the school at the level that has carefully been established as the need for Cordova students. Thank you.
Evening. How long do I get?
3.
All right. Bradford, 402 Railroad Road. Thanks you guys for your time, sitting in these seats. Being there, I know what it's all about, so good luck. Wanted to talk to you about the budget tonight, and specifically a $750,000 bond payment. A few years ago, we were getting a lot of extra revenue from timber receipts, and we tucked that into the permanent fund so that we could pay those bonds with the permanent fund when the time came, when we needed it, when our revenues are down. And that time is now. So please fund the school to the ask. We're not asking for the cap. We're asking for what we need. The solution is to pay that bond debt out of your permanent fund, and that gives you a lot of breathing room. I mean, we've got to spend money to make money, right? We've got to have some capital projects to keep the wheels moving, to grease the skids. We've got lots of opportunities that we need to take advantage of, but we, the city, needs to spend some money on it to be able to do that. So if you were able to pay that $750,000 out of the permanent fund, you can fund the school to the ask, plus you'll have a few hundred extra thousand for breathing room. So consider that. It's not too late. When we put that money in the permanent fund, we weren't trying to dictate to future councils how to spend the permanent fund or anything else. We're just trying to give options so we could kind of foresee what might happen down the road. So that's about all I have to say for now. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brett.
Hi, I'm Julie Reynolds, I live at 210 Boardwalk Way. Thank you all for your time and service. I don't envy you the job you have before you. I am here today to ask you to fully fund the Cordova schools. I know the city needs money, but we cannot take it from the children. We are the adults, and it's our job to take care of them. They are literally our future. Underfunding the schools by $400,000 is unacceptable. People live in Cordova because of the kind of community it is, the kind of community that takes care of each other and that takes care of our children. Please fund the schools at 100% of what we're asking. Thank you very much for your time and service.
Thank you.
Evening. My name is Leonard Butch West. I'm a 60-year Alaska resident. I have 3 kids and 2 wives that have graduated from the schools in this town. And I can honestly say that everybody in town that I know is fully support whatever it takes to keep them well funded. And as for the city manager's bonus, I got one thing to say. Last year he got a $20,000 bonus, and he cried broke to us when it came to negotiations. We got no money. It's hard to tell the working people of this city that the city's broke and then turn around and want to give them another $10,000 bonus, and then negotiations coming up again at the end of this year, and then we'll hear the same thing. City has no money. We can't afford to give you what you'd like, or even consider it. And that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Butch.
Pete Hefner, Orca Circle, someplace. Okay, not the number. Someplace on there. Anyway, as I said, in the last couple years, it's been interesting. In the last 3 years, we've seen a decrease in education funding to the city of Cordova, the school district. It kind of appalls me. I'm a relentless advocate for education funding when I go to the state legislature. The state legislature asks, does your city support you? In the past, I've been able to say yes. I can't say that any longer. So then the legislature asks me, well, if your city doesn't support you, why should the state support you? And understanding education funding, I'm not sure if one of the things that's interesting about it, you think it's just a contribution to education. Well, what happens is the state hasn't funded education for the last 10 years. the state education, the base student allocation has increased 8.7% in 10 years. That doesn't keep up with inflation. Our health insurance has gone up 326% in that same time frame. So you can see that education isn't being funded. So the city level of education funding is based on a formula from that state funding. So by decreasing additionally $400,000, we've spent all of our savings. The school district has been responsible saving energy costs, and we've spent all of our savings that we've saved over the last 10 years. And we're still not adequately funded, even if we asked for the cap, which we didn't even ask for that. So also I noticed in the packet here, you talk about SRS funding, and it says return the SRS funding back into the annual funding formula. And so what's interesting about that SRS, it used to be called timber receipts. It's called Secure Rural Schools Funding. And so, you know, when you look at it, the schools in a 10-year period, it's about 17 to $18 million in funding. The city of Cordova received $10 million in Secure Rural Schools funding in that time frame. And now we're being cut. I've often joked that the school is the goose that laid the golden egg. And why are we being cut the first time, As well as the fact is, why is schools being cut 23%? None of the other departments are cut that extensively. It just boggles my mind. I mean, the bonuses, oh my gosh, I don't understand that. Schools are being defunded and giving bonuses. I hear there's several different organizations in town that are handing out bonuses, not to the employees. Those are the people that are working. And the other thing is that you guys, and I really appreciate you guys taking on the job of city council. It's like the legislature, it isn't any fun anymore. But do the citizens of Cordova want a budget education? Do we want to shortchange our children? I mean, you guys have got kids in school. We've got classes, we had a kindergarten of 36 kids. Our class sizes are increasing. Is that what you want? Anyway, we've asked for funding. Other organizations have asked for funding. They get it, schools don't. I'm not sure why.
Hi guys, Wendy Rainey, 2500 Orca Road. Pretty much same thing you guys are hearing from most of the room. The children are one of Cordova's most precious assets. They're literally the future of our community. We have a moral duty to provide the tools that they're going to need when they leave Cordova. We're honor bound to make sure they have the building blocks that they need to go on to higher education, to get skills for trades, or to take over their family businesses. They can't do that if the schools don't have what they need. It's a public school system, and we as a community need to do all that we can to help them provide for our children. With that being said, on the flip side of that, the school is by no means the only priority for Cordova. And my promise to you, as I understand your promise to Cordova, is to make decisions that are best, is that I not only come to you to advocate for the school, but I go to the school to advocate for the kids. The school district needs to also look internally to their budget, and they need to look for ways to get money to come into them other than the city. So the people sitting in this audience should also be attending school board meetings and helping the school board to find funding other than just coming to the city. But right now, we're in your audience. The future means that the families coming back will come with kids. It means that families coming into town will bring skills in order to save Cordova's economy. The kids that we educate here need to want to come back and raise their families here. And the education system is what's going to draw people in. If the future for Cordova means we need to cut the hospital loose from the city management, then do it. If it means we need to look at sin tax to get money into the equation, let's look at it. There's 3 law enforcement agencies in this community year-round. We're not such a big community that we can't look at pairing together and working together interagency instead of having things on the loose. That also means bringing the school district into the city and having them work together to find other funding methods. We're a small community, and we need to work together to take care of all of it. The kids are important. The school is asking for 400,000. The city, I would hope, would find a way to make that happen. Thank you.
Yeah, Brad Reynolds, 210 Boardwalk Way. Yeah, again, I want to thank everybody for being here. It's a hot seat for volunteers, so you take our grievances well. Anyway, I kind of want to stress I've heard a lot of specifics about the numbers, about the funding sources, where the school is at and what it needs. But I kind of want to just say, kind of seconding what Wendy just mentioned, that it's a choice that we make to reside here, to raise our children here. When my wife and I were having a conversation the other night, I told her that, you know, as a single individual, if we hadn't married and had children, I would probably have gone on to better economic opportunities. I probably would have gone somewhere that had maybe a little better climate. But as a parent, it's a family consideration I'd make to stay here. Primarily, we have a community that's safe. It's a great place to raise kids. But secondly, we have a school district that supports our educational needs of our kids. I mean, my kids wake up in the morning and they're excited to go to school. Now, that shouldn't surprise me, but in a way it does. And I hope that continues. I feel like we underfund our school system. We undermine the quality of education. We undermine our community. So I would like to see City Council approve a funding bill that actually fully funds our school district and supports our community by supporting our kids. I don't want to lose the quality of life we have here, but it is an option we have. I mean, as a fisherman, I can do like a lot of families. I can move somewhere else for the wintertime, come here, make my income, and then, you know, leave again in the fall. We have a lot of professionals in the city that have come here, and one thing that tipped the balance in their decision to reside in Cordova was that they had educational opportunities for their kids that meet their needs. So I would like to see our revenue stay in Cordova. I'd like to continue attracting talent to this town because we have a well-funded school system that meets the kids' needs. So please fully fund our schools. Thank you.
Melissa Kleisler, 301 Railroad Row. I don't have much to add to what I've heard tonight, except it sounds like there's more money that can go to the schools from places. And I would really hope that the council would decide to use those other sources to fund the schools. I'm only there for 2 hours a day, but functioning on the current budget, I can see that the schools aren't even meeting the basic needs. I mean, the bathrooms at the high school, the doors don't even close. So that's a basic need that isn't even getting met at the current budget. So I'm sure if the schools are asking you for $400,000, they need it and they're not gonna just waste it. So thank you for your time, and that's all.
Hi, Tammy Altremont, 811 Woodland Drive. I have 2 kids currently in the district. I have a son who graduated starting kindergarten here and went to college, came back, and he has 2 kids, one who is in preschool. I'm a school board member in my 6th year, and I'm here to advocate for our kids in regards to the budget for the school district. When I first ran for school board, it was because I wanted to advocate for my own children and saw it as a way to do so. It wasn't long after being on school board that I knew my advocacy went beyond my own kids and went to every child in the district. And that is why I'm here tonight, to ask that the district be funded to their full budgetary request. I want every child in the district to have the opportunity to have a quality education. Cordova goes above and beyond for our kids, as reflected in our many community partners that donate their time and resources to our kids, to the businesses and individuals who consistently support our kids in their fundraising efforts, to the parents and community members that volunteer their time to our kids. Our kids are our most important resource, and we need to put them as a priority. And as you can see, we have an amazing school district, and every school board member is here tonight advocating for the same thing. The district has been responsible. We go through our budget, and we're not asking for more than we need. We're asking for what we need, and we can't maintain quality of education that we have right now with being short funded. So I would just ask that we put the kids first. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kara Johnson. I'm at 701 Lake Avenue, number 4, and I want to comment on the budget being presented. I would like to say I'm thankful that you have put in money for training and for maintenance and for equipment that was zeroed out last year, and it was unrealistic. So I'm glad to see that that's in there. You're also increasing our fee schedule as well as asking for more money for our E911. I'm a little concerned for people who are on fixed budgets to be able to accommodate these increases in price, and I would encourage you to maybe moderate the E911 budget a little bit or request down from $2 a line to maybe $1 a line. I also do believe that our kids are really important, and I feel like there is a lot of money that we are not taking advantage of. We have huge holes in our tax laws. We have huge holes in our budget, our business licensing, and I believe that we need a sin tax. You guys have voted that down before. You're throwing away money. People are not going to leave this town because there's a sin tax. So there's other ways to get money. You're taxing the harbor more now to raise money there. There's other ways to get money. So please consider funding our schools and looking at ways within our budget that might be able to be trimmed a little bit, and consider maybe not giving us so many more fees all at once.
Barb Joel, mile 2.2 Whiteshed Road, and I want to echo the thanks that other people have expressed, and I do feel it deeply. You all are you give a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of thought to making Cordova a good place to live and work and play, and I appreciate it. Other people have spoken pretty eloquently about the requests that the school district has made and the fact that it's based on needs. I've sent you a couple of letters about it, so I won't reiterate those points. I think instead I'll tell you that 10 years ago when my husband and I were looking for a place to live to move from Anchorage, we had a lot of options, right? And we chose Cordova primarily because I got online and looked at the websites and looked at the blogs and looked at the school district website and the state website about outcomes and everything I could look at about the school. Because I had 2 kids, one going into fourth grade, and one going to 7th. It's a pretty critical time in their education. And I chose Cordova because of the schools. So here I am, 9 years later. My kids are done. My son's graduating this year. They have had the benefit of an excellent education with opportunities that many of my friends in other cities are jealous of. Their kids didn't get to do SHOP. They didn't get home ec. They didn't get the advanced AP classes that we offer here. And they're both moving on to bigger and better things as a result of their education here in Cordova. I am advocating for you to provide those opportunities for all the kids coming up behind mine. They deserve the same level of education that my children got. And when we come to you and tell you what we need, we mean it. We're not joking, we're not padding, we're not exaggerating. We've taken very deep, thoughtful looks at what our students need and what our community has asked of us in terms of education services. And you have a lot of competing priorities, and I understand that. I also know that it's a basic tenet of communities, that there are core things that keep a community strong, and schools are right at the top of that list.
I do think that you have the money to fund the schools. I think that the secure rural schools money should be used to keep our schools secure. I appreciate the time you've offered to the conversation and the thought you put into it, and I wish you luck with your decision.
You were. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Eric Sanders, 101 East Henrik Street. I'd like to echo everyone's comments about the school budget. But instead of reiterating all of that, I'll just tell you my personal story, which is similar to the school. My wife and I moved here going on almost 3 years now, and we had a lot of opportunities throughout Alaska. We picked Cordova because of the schools. I think, I know most of the staff, at least at Mount Eccles. I've got 2 kids there, and they're phenomenal. I'd like to please fund the school.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tommy Sheridan, 610 Spruce Street. Here speaking for my wife as well. I don't have anything really new to say. We feel the same way that a lot of folks here do. In 2010, when I came here to visit and consider a position here, it was the school that really caught my eye. We were planning on starting a family, and so I would say that that was a big factor in our decision. We looked into the school system and found it to be what others have described. A few years ago, I had a change in position that really, to be quite honest, could make it so we could live anywhere in the state. My wife's a nurse here, works at the hospital, and we chose to stay here. We endured pretty significant hardship for a couple of years, but we wanted our kids to stay here. We wanted our kids to be in the school system here. It's not the easiest place to live at times. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense financially for a lot of reasons. The weather sucks. But that school is a big reason why we stay. And if I'm the last person, it's not because there aren't more people who would want to share that with you. I'm sure if more folks understood what was being discussed here, they'd probably come and speak if they could as well. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Hello, my name is William Deaton. I live at 524 2nd Street. I'm a junior in high school, and I want to show support for the school. I think it's important to fully fund the high school, the school district. They're not asking for more than what they need. They need this money. So I would greatly appreciate it if you guys decided to fully fund the school district. Thank you.
Mike Hicks, box 674 Cordova. I'd like to speak to the E911 resolution, and I would hope that the council would fully fund that. We've been working on this project for many, many years, and we believe we have a way forward. And we just recently started dispatching for Whittier and Girdwood, so we would also be able to collect the surcharges on those communities as well, to lessen the burden on our community. And I would also like to speak to the alcohol and tobacco taxes. As a police officer, as a firefighter, and a medic, our 2 biggest user groups use alcohol and tobacco. They put the biggest strain on our system. Whether it be medic calls, fires caused by careless smoking, you name it. If you look at the statistics, they're probably put the biggest strain on our user group. And some of this funding could perhaps be used to help some of our shortfalls with the schools and other areas in the community. As for bonuses, you all know more about what goes on behind the scenes than the rest of us in this room. And if you've got a good employee and you determine that they deserve a bonus, then you should act accordingly. Thank you.
Hello, Becky Niles, 503 First Street. Not sure if everybody that's here for the school needs to come up here, but I just want to say I'm here to support funding the school to the amount they've asked. That's it.
I haven't heard anybody against the school, so I'm assuming everybody out there supports the schools. Anybody else before we start our regular meeting here? Okay, our time being up and no further comments coming from the audience, we will declare the public meeting, or the, what is this? Public hearing adjourned. John Bitney, did you join us on the line?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you fine, thank you. We're just finishing up our public hearing and now we'll go into the regular meeting. I will add you as a guest speaker.
Thank you.
You ready? Okay, we'll call the regular city council meeting of December 19th, 2018 at 7 p.m. to order. It's actually 7:06. Roll call, please. Oh, call to order. Oh. Okay, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland? Was by
Here.
Okay. James Burton?
Here.
Ken Jones?
Here.
Jeff Guard?
Here.
Melina Meyer?
Here.
Ann Schaefer?
Here.
David Allison?
Here.
James Weiss?
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Approval of the regular agenda is up.
Move to approve the regular agenda of December 19th, 2018.
Second. Moving second to approve the regular agenda. The only change I have is I would like to add John Bitney, our city lobbyist, as a guest speaker. He just has a couple minutes. He would like to address us. Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Anybody have any disclosures of conflict of interest? This would also include ex parte communications if anybody had any direct conversations with Smith of the Polar Bear. I think is the only ex parte item on our agenda tonight. If you did, then you can declare that now and then you can tell us all what was discussed when we get to that item on the agenda.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Mayor, I was at a Harbor Commission meeting where he came and talked to us, so I talked to him at that meeting.
Okay, I think if it was part of the meeting, that doesn't matter.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, hearing none. Communications by and petitions from visitors. The first item on the agenda is our guest speaker, Mr. John Bitney, the city lobbyist. John, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope we're just be about 2 minutes, if that's okay. I just wanted to just offer some quick comments in regards to the resolution 12/1835, which sets up the list of capital priorities. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you, John. Fine.
Thank you. I just wanted to just basically start off by complimenting the council. One of the nice things about working for Cordova is that we're at least consistent in terms of what our priorities are every year. The issue down in Juneau here where I'm at right now is that we haven't had a capital budget to speak of for about 5 years now. So our port project and harbor renovation have stayed there at number one, where they continue today. The thing I wanted to talk about briefly is that the state has been funding other communities for their harbors through the state harbor matching grant program. where the state makes up to $5 million available on a one-to-one match for communities that do that. And they've done that consistently every year, even in these low capital budget times. They've applied $5 million every year into that program. And what that means is that even if we do get funds on the table available to them, if we come in for those kinds of harbor improvements that are otherwise covered in that matching program, we get asked, why aren't we going through that program if we're going to get state funding for harbor improvement? And I'm looking at the resolution, and basically that would be sub-items A and C, for example, under number 1 there. The harbor program does not include things like upland and the general upgrades, and so to the extent that there might be 100% state funding available for some of these things, they could apply into some of those subcategories. I hope that makes sense. And so I know we've talked about looking at that. Obviously, the city's finances are key in terms of whether or not the city has the means and the ability to come up with its own $5 million, to match $5 million from the state. But that has been kind of what we've been up against in terms of that, trying to get some money. There is some talk down here in Juneau, though, of trying to come up with some money for school repairs, and I'm looking at item number 2 on here. And the reason I say that is because the earthquake hit Anchorage and Matsu pretty good, and they're still totaling up the damages there. And some of the schools there got hit pretty good, and so there is some talk about some kind of a school funding package that may come together to address those earthquake damages, as well as items that are on, longstanding items on the Department of Education's priority list. So there's some movement there at this point about how to have some conversations in that regard. So I guess that's kind of the upside, if you will, to looking at this list as it's proposed. I can answer any questions about that, and I'll just leave that as far as on the general bigger picture right now. Governor Walker, he was leaving office, the last days in office, put out what he called a placeholder budget for the state that was just sort of, if we fully fund the K through 12 education program at the current base student allocation level, $30 million for revenue sharing, the Marine Highway schedule as we know it, what that budget would look like. On December 14th, the new Governor Dunleavy's administration did an update to that. The only thing they changed was they put in additional money to fund the permanent fund dividend program, and then they modified the revenue forecast to what they said was a more realistic projection on what oil was, the price of oil would be, which resulted in a higher deficit level of about $1.6 billion now that we're looking at. But I guess the bad news is that it's very clear from comments that I'm hearing and the conversations down here that the Dunleavy administration is taking a hard look at coming to the legislature probably by the second week of February. Their goal is to propose $1 billion in cuts to the state budget. And really, in order to get to that level of cut, the items that will have to be on the table to achieve that would be obviously Medicaid, K through 12 education, and transportation, because those are just big ticket items that comprise the budget in order to get to that level of cuts. So as we talk about some of this stuff going forward, and I think that's good, and we need to do that as far as our capital priorities in the resolution here, I just want to point out that a lot of our efforts, I think, too, are also going to be somewhat defensive, if you will, next session as far as legislative priorities and giving voice to some of the things that I've heard coming up during the public hearing process about making sure that we fund education and keep the ferries going and those kinds of things. So I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I think that it's just important to keep those things in perspective going forward. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Are you aware of our moving forward the a bond proposal to match that $5 million on that harbor grant thing, and then some additional ways to pay that off? We've got some issues on our ballot coming up in March. Are you aware of those?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am, and I applaud you for that. I know that you guys are making tough decisions, but any information I can get you, I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for John?
So John, this is Ken Jones here. I'm not sure if you have a copy of the packet or anything in front of you, if you're able to go through it, but I sent Susan, Clay, and Alan an email with a few changes I was hoping to make to this list. I was wondering if you'd seen that.
Yes, I have that right in front of me. I think you brought up some good points here, Ken.
Okay, yeah, I was just mainly gonna see if you think that layout was, in line with, what we should do as far as separating the grant projects from the upland projects that could go after that 100% funding.
Yes, I think that's very helpful in terms of those subcategories under the port and harbor. I think that would be very helpful because, like I said, some of these things would be part of the matching program, and then some of them we can look at, perhaps some more, higher levels of state funding. The only comment I would add is just that I don't know what you have under school repairs, but like I said, I think there's going to be some talk of the school repairs funding down here, and if you have some items there that are significant, I think you may want to give some thought to perhaps moving that up on the list, or at least fleshing that out a little bit. It doesn't necessarily have to be tonight, but at some point here, once things become more clear in Juneau, that might be something to think about.
Okay, and so for that, would it be helpful to identify specific projects and put them as bullet points under school repairs? Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, I don't know that you need to do that tonight, obviously, but I just wanted to just because of, like I said, where the conversations are going, it's good to just have that in mind and maybe come up with some ideas of what those school repairs are and some estimates on it.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? James online, any questions for John? Clay?
No questions.
Okay, thank you, John. I don't know if he needs to be around for later, but when we talk about the capital thing, you already discussed it, so I don't think you need to stay if you don't feel the need, John.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and drop off then, but I will leave, if I could, with this, is that I would like to talk to Clay and to Alan about coming back before you here at some point in a month or so. Not only just talk about this, but we also had a conversation a little over a month ago about redistricting and some other issues, and I would like to come back to Cordova here in the near future and update you on some of those things. I'd like to be there in person to do that.
Sure, sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is audience comments regarding agenda items. Anything that's on this agenda. If you have additional comments, if you made comments during the public hearing, there's no need to reiterate those. We have those, but if you have something on those items or any other thing on this agenda, please feel free.
Thank you. Thanks for making me feel welcome here. I just flew in to meet with this body the other day. My name is Matt McDaniel. I'm a former resident of Cordova. I've been privileged that this community gave me jobs to help me get through college over the years, and I've got lots of extended family here. I'm also a former director for the YAC Corporation. But I'm actually here in my capacity as vice chairman for Chugach Alaska Corporation. And I know on the agenda you guys are discussing the idea of a Prince William Sound borough. And we've stayed in close contact with a lot of the community leaders throughout the Prince William Sound, to include Tutitlik, Chenega, Valdez, and Whittier. And all of those communities have been in open, they've come out in opposition of that kind of support. And I know that you guys are on a fact-finding mission and have a feasibility study that you're considering. But I just wanted to share that those are facts. And that I'd be happy to entertain the audience outside of this forum to discuss some of our findings and information so that you guys can make more informed decisions and look at moving forward or looking at alternatives. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments on agenda items this evening? That was John Bitney.
Hi, folks. Kristen Carpenter, 507 4th Street. I just wanted to talk about a couple things in the packet. The first item I want to talk about is the letter regarding the polar bear. And I just want to comment, and this is nothing personal, but I really feel pretty strongly that it would be inappropriate to bring it back to the same spot. I think if you allow that for one vessel, then you've made a policy and you've made it possible for anybody to do that. More vessel on public lands, and I don't think that's what we want. I mean, we have a harbor. It's 4 vessels, and if vessels want a safe place to moor, then they should be in a place where they have safe mooring and they're not going to create an issue. You know, there are several vessels outside of the Prince William Marina that are just grounded in the channels out there, and they're abandoned and derelict, and there's nothing practical, I think, that can be done for those, but I don't think that we want to have a policy where you make an allowance for one person and then it makes it possible for others to do the same thing. So I would ask you to consider that. And the other comment I want to make is about the capital improvements priority list. I think Kenny's done a nice job of organizing things to break it out, and I appreciate that the hospital upgrades are on there, so thank you for including that. But I do want to comment, and as you know, I'm a big fan of the city staircase, and I appreciate that that's on the list. But the Sawmill Avenue extension, for me personally, I would urge you to take it off the list. I don't think I've never understood what problem that solves. I don't know that there's a huge pressing need for it. You know, is there a population that really needs it because of public safety? And then I think when you compare it to other things on this list, I don't know that it really stacks up as a pressing need. And so I know it's been talked about over the years, and I felt like it was one of those things that it just kept showing up on the list, and I'm not really sure why. And I know we talked about it during the South Phil project, but again, I don't remember there being resounding support for it, and I still don't get what problem it was trying to solve. So I would urge you to give that another look when you talk about it. Thank you very much.
Hello, Kara Johnson, 701 Lake Avenue, number 4. I want to speak to a couple things on the agenda. Number 1, the contract with the GovTemps USA for an interim finance director. It's stated that this person will be given a contract of $91,000, which is over half of the allocated money for the finance department, and that's for a single person for 6 months. And I'm wondering how the rest of the department is going to be funded for the rest of the year. So please consider that. I would also like to speak to the capital improvements list as well. And I want to second what Kristen said, that the sawmill extension is, in my opinion, a ridiculous project. And there hasn't been a single person injured in walking all the way around from the school to AC. So it would fill in wetlands, which we don't need to, and it's not really going to generate us money to do that unless you plan on making that a business district or make it available for housing somehow, because we need available housing and we don't need an extension of a road that serves no purpose. And I am just against the formation of a Prince William Sound borough. I don't think it's really beneficial to us, and I think right now, not the best place for us to spend our money.
Hi, hello. My name's Oceana Black, and I live at 601 Spruce Street, and I can't stay for the meeting, and I was a little bit late. And I just was encouraged the council to fully fund the school district. I've worked as a sub for 2 years, and I haven't seen any extraneous spending by any means, and I just feel like even in a recession, education should be a top priority. Kids come first in my mind, and just common sense. I mean, bonuses or six-figure incomes, I mean, there's places you can find. What really matters is the children. So thanks for allowing this meeting.
Thank you. Any other audience comments on the agenda items? Okay, seeing now, we'll move on to chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions. CCMC Advisory Board. Kristen still here?
Thanks. Let's see, I just have a couple quick things I can touch on. One is we are told we're gonna get our audit report by the end of the year, so it's coming. We're getting ready to do an evaluation of the administrator. We'll be doing that in January. Folks are interested in knowing more about that process. And then also we had the state surveyors were here last week for the nursing home survey. And I just wanted to share a couple comments about that because Scott gave us a rundown each time they do a life safety evaluation where they're looking at the facility, and there was some damage to one door because of the earthquake. And there were a couple other things that they found, but in terms of the medical care survey, they said this survey is the best long-term care survey the CCMC has ever received since they started coming here, and 2 of those 3 surveyors that were here have been coming here for several years. And there are lots of bullet points, but the 2 that I thought were the most, the ones that gave us the highest marks. The surveyor said that they observed the medication administration for many of the residents during the week on both shifts. There were no medication errors observed, which I thought was terrific. And they also, let's see, they also talked about, they stated they were pleased with the help and the assistance they were given by the CNAs and the nurses during the survey. They don't always get the level of cooperation that they saw here. So the folks are really, really jazzed about how well that went. This team has been working really hard. Scott said that he had a couple of department heads and 1 CNA come in and sit in on the exit interview. And the reviewers were super positive, and he was with them for another 30 minutes. And by the time he got back out on the floor, a bunch of CNAs were coming up to him and saying, thank you, we're so pleased. That's such great news. We're really proud of how well we did. So I think there's a real culture shift happening, and I think people are happy about working there, and they're pleased about the work that the surveyors are pleased with the work that's being done. So,
thank you.
Yeah, any other?
Do you have any questions for Kristen?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. School board.
I'm just telling you, you're gonna be sick of me by the end of the meeting. I already know it. But I did want to tell you a couple of items. We're getting ready for break, so things are gonna be slowing down a little bit. But we had some state music awards to our students. We had 2 wrestlers go to state. We had our volleyball team go to state. We're looking forward to tip-off and hosting basketball regionals. So the staff and the students have been working very hard to get ready for those events coming up. And we got our audit back earlier this year than in past years, which we were very happy about because we have a new auditor. Put it out to bid last year and chose a different group. And we have a clean audit, no findings. They were astonished because we were within $1,000 of what we had budgeted, where we landed at the end of the year. So we were all pleased with all of that. And I want to give kudos to our staff as well. They certainly referenced that working with our administrators, our finance officer and our superintendent made their work easy and smooth and efficient. So I wanted to give them kudos as well. Any questions? Did I forget anything?
Basketball team's going, is the ferry back, more importantly?
Yes. So they should be going to Rally of the Regions, right?
Yeah, well, they have
Tomorrow, they're going.
Sioux Valley this,
Right.
and Houston this week, I think.
Reddington and Houston.
Reddington, yeah.
And JV girls are gonna be at a Lumen tournament. But all 4 teams are going, JV and varsity.
And the varsity girls went last weekend and played against 4A teams in a tournament,
Yeah,
and they
they
took
did
third.
well.
So,
Right on. Thank you. Okay, we don't have a student council rep here this evening. I don't think so. Will, are you sitting in on that? You want to fill us in?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
On the mic, please, so they can hear you.
All right. Student council met on Tuesday. We're going to be having student council elections on January 14th and 15th for the new officers of that. Attached to that election, we're also going to be taking a survey of the student body for the Wednesday schedule, what they want to see in the future, particularly next year, on what they want to see in that, whether that wants to go away, or whether they would like to have that shifted to Friday or some other day, or some variation of that. But those are the two big ones. We had our student council Christmas party today after school. That was a lot of fun. Deck the Halls went well. Junior class, yay, go us. We won, and so TC or CEC1 is giving us $100 for that, so thank you for that. But I think that's all we have to report at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Will. And congratulations on your Senate appointment there.
Thank you.
Okay. Consent calendar is before you.
Okay, getting there. On the consent calendar, Melina Meyer,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
James Weiss,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
James Burton,
Yes.
Ken Jones.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Okay, thank you. We have 4 sets of minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of the 11/21/18 public hearing, 11/21/18 regular meeting, the 12/5/18 council public hearing, and the 12/5/18 regular council meeting.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, changes, additions, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have no bids on the agenda, so report of officers. The mayor's report. Clay, did you have anything you want to throw in there? Apparently not. Okay, we'll move on to the manager's report. Alan?
We do have our audit, the draft audit, which I sent out to all of you by email. And if you have questions on that, we're gonna, as soon as we get CCMC's final audit and get it wrapped into ours, we will have our auditors here for a presentation at that time. I would say that my preliminary look at the audit, 17 was a good financial year for us in that we were pretty close on budget for the year. In the packet on page 17, you have a copy of a contract that we signed with a recruiting firm to hire a temporary finance director, 6-month duration. The terms are in there. And yes, we did consider the cost of this versus the cost of the budget for the year. And then you'll see on page 31, Journey's talk about fish tax implementation as part of the bond payments. And I think what we'd like to just tell you is, you know, the gentleman who's coming to be our finance director has significant experience in Alaska. You know, one of the things I think he has is fish tax experience. So I think what we'd like to do in early January is bring you a couple options for the implementation and methodology of a fish tax for you to consider and see how that works. And if you have any ideas along the way, just let us know and we can figure out how to incorporate that, and then we don't have to engage in a lengthy discussion on it. We can sort of narrow it down for you, what's worked and what hasn't worked. Because there are a number of them out there, so if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I guess the memo from the attorney said something to the effect of, we had a couple of options. We can wait until after the vote, or we can do something prior to the vote. I'd prefer to do it.
I think we're gonna, yeah, go ahead.
We need to go into this vote thinking we're gonna win, and making sure people are educated enough to know the importance of the project, so that they will vote for it, and then be ready to implement.
And I think that's what we were thinking as well. In addition, I asked staff this morning to schedule, 3 public meetings very soon here, so that we could go through how all of this would work and what's going to be derived from the project and so forth. We're doing the APOC stuff so that we can advocate and appropriate money. So we're just going to move forward with all that with the same thought in mind that we're going to be successful in that election. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Questions for the manager?
Not necessarily a question, but I too was a little concerned about the funding, about going over what we budgeted for, so maybe we can touch on that as it goes, the contract for the financial director.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah. It's just the way the rate works out. We tried very heavily, as I indicated as we were reading through this, I said we try to keep it very close to half of the allotment for the year. The appropriation for the year is about 160 grand in total for that position, and this is costing us 91. So it's 11 over, and we'll have to make adjustments for the rest of the year.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bird.
What I was unclear on it was.
Can't hear.
What I was unclear on it with that numbers there, is that just over half of the budgeted dollars for personnel for the whole department, or just the one position?
Just the one position.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else for the manager?
I have a question around the phone real quick.
Go ahead, James.
So, we've been aware that this was happening for some time. I understand that. I just wonder if we're missing a step here when it comes to the authorization of a contract of this value. This memo says it's basically for informational purposes, but there's been no approval from council unless I missed something, and I haven't missed a meeting in a while. So I just want to make sure that we're not missing a step here.
According to our city attorney, because this is an appropriation that is within the budgeted amount for the 19 budget, it's not required as a contract approval of the city council, in particular because it's a personnel issue. It's filling a personnel slot.
Okay.
But as I've always tried to do, I'm providing it as information for you so that you understood what we're trying to accomplish through this contract.
Right, I understand that. I just want to make sure, like I said, that we're not missing a step in the process.
Okay.
Any further for the manager? Okay, thank you, Alan. City clerk's report.
I don't have anything. Except for that, I just am doing a lot of packets and minutes, caught up, and I can answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for the clerk? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we got some correspondence. Email from Lou Reynolds, letter from the Forest Service, mayor's letter, support for Alaska Air and Essential Air Service. Email from Lieutenant Russin, and mayor's letter to Alaska Air already, their cargo service. Comments on any of those? Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for writing those letters, and thank you everybody else for your correspondence. Moving on then to ordinances and resolutions. Resolution 12-18-33.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 12-18-33. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, adopting and operating a capital budget for fiscal year 2019 and appropriating the amount of $15,181,260 as summarized pursuant to the following table.
For clarification, this,
Could you read it from this?
what's before us
I'm sorry.
is a different, there's a different dollar amount in the figure, if you could restate the dollar amount.
Yeah, appropriating the amount of $15,288,342.
Case been moved. Was there a second?
Second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. To approve the budget resolution. Discussion. Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I moved this to get it on the table so we can talk about approving it. I would be open to an amendment to include more funding for the school district. I would suggest either one of the two following options, using the permanent fund to pay for the bond debt repayment, or two, raising the fish tax line item from 800,000 to whatever amount we decide to add.
Okay, any other comments? Mr. Gard?
I would definitely like to see some changes here, and I'm in favor of making sure our schools are good and solid. That's something Cordova's always been real proud of, and all the time I've been around here. But I was having a hard time hearing Jeff. Oh, I'm babbling. You didn't miss anything for that part of it. Anyway, as far as just moving numbers around for fish tax, we're kind of playing Ouija board stuff there. And we're kind of already doing that because we know of another 1.2 that we've got sitting out there from the hospital that isn't on the sheet for next year. And I understand that we can address it at a later date. But I don't feel real good about just playing with money and not acknowledging we have these issues out there and just passing a budget here and thinking everything's good and great when we're not quite as good and great as we want. So if we want to fully fund the schools, which I'd support, I think the only place we can take it from is a permanent fund. I don't know how long that process is going to take to do this. We've got enough people at the meeting to have a vote to take the money out of the permanent fund. We've got a big enough quorum to do it. I don't know how long it takes to do that legally for notices and stuff. that's why we got a really smart clerk to tell us that.
We'd need another public hearing and another meeting, because it would take two.
I don't know how it works
Two
to
readings,
use the
right?
permanent fund money within the budget. Does it get approved within the budget approval? And then at a later date, you pass an ordinance?
You could
to
probably use the interest from this year if there was any.
I believe that's already in. Interest is probably already.
Mr. Vice Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead, James.
I would suggest, like Kenny said, well, let me back up a minute. The Cordova School District has been, or at least our high school, has been number 1 or number 2 in the state for the last several years. I've got a lot of pride coming from CHS. I know some of the other people around the table do also. We offer some pretty awesome opportunities to our kids through dual credit classes and being able to put kids into college with, you know, in my case, I went in with 30 credits, entered as a sophomore. It saved me a ton of money, just personally. And now that, for the last however many years that's been going on, 25 plus years, it's invaluable to the kids in our community. Now, in previous budget discussions, I had mentioned wanting to get back to the pre-2017 budget levels. You know, something in the $1.75 to $1.8 million range. I think that's totally doable. I don't know if we can get all the way to 1.9 tonight, but I know 1.75 is a lot better than 1.5. Now, I asked the city manager some questions today. I didn't get the answers that I wanted. Actually, didn't get the answers to the question at all. Some of those were related to money that so when we set up this strategic planning and we went through however many work sessions we went through, we said that we were going to budget $800,000 for fish tax, and if we got anything in excess of that, that money was going to be put into the permanent fund or the general fund reserve or towards capital projects, this, that, or the other. To the best of my knowledge, that hasn't happened. Now, I've asked those questions, where that money went. I haven't gotten an answer to it, so what I would suggest doing now is saying, let's amend this budget and reflect at least $1,050,000 in raw fish tax money and give an additional $250,000 to the Cordova School District. And if you want that in the form of a motion, then so moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend a couple of numbers on the budget, amend the fish tax number up 250,000 and the school expenditure up 250,000. That's the motion, right? Okay, who made the, James, you want to speak to the motion?
I think I made it pretty clear what my intention is.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jones?
Yeah, so that's basically what I was trying to get at earlier. And, you know, with this fish tax line item, we went into the strategic plan. We wanted to take this and be conservative so that way we could save money, get ourselves into a better financial position. Heard multiple times from Alan, build our cash reserves. We wanted to, you know, our 10-year average is 1.1 million. The last 10 years of fish tax, and we set it at 800,000, so we could take that extra 300,000 and save it for when we have a downturn in that fish tax revenue, which is just bound to happen. You know, if we don't get 1.1 every single year, it goes up and down, and it's hard to calculate. But for the last 2 years, we were at 800,000, and we got 1.16, and then this year we got 1.48. So we have gotten the extra revenues that we were seeking to build. You know, our cash savings. And as far as I've been made aware, we're in a better cash position than we were this time a year ago because of that. We, yeah, I mean, we've got almost $1 million in extra fish tax over what we budgeted in the last 2 years. And so with the intention of that strategic plan being to set aside a year's worth of fish tax, that's been accomplished, and it's been accomplished a lot sooner than we thought it was going to be. You know, we wanted to take 3 years and put 300,000 away every year so that we could have 900,000 and build our cash reserves. And I think that it's happened, and I think that this is a good way to use revenues that have been coming in greater than anticipated to support our kids, if that makes sense.
Anybody else? Okay, go ahead, James.
I'd like to speak in favor of the motion. I would amend it to draw 150,000. I'd like to get them to where they're trying to be, to the 400,000 that they're trying to get to. I'd like
I hear
to
what you're
amend
saying.
it.
I think if we could take one at a time.
Time is fine.
Because we need to find the other 150 too. So think about that motion and we'll see where this one goes and then. Yeah, go ahead,
I
Councilman.
just have a question. I mean, we try to fund schools, but have we seen like a budget from the school of, you know, this is, I know we see your budget in July when you pass it, but have we seen the breakdown of this is our budget and this is where the 400,000 that we are minus, that we are negative? I don't know if we've seen that budget breakdown and like for where the 400,000 comes from.
I believe we got a rough projection, but they don't finalize that budget until May anyway, probably until they know what they get. So they're still working on that budget. I'll take the liberty of making some statements and saying some things here, and Alex or somebody from the school, or correct me if I misstate anything. But the school's budget the school has a different fiscal year than the city. Number one, their fiscal year ends June 30th and begins July 1st. And so the budget we're talking about, where the school is saying they need 400,000, is the budget from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, which is really only half of this budget that we're currently talking about. So that's point number one. So I think the 250 is more than half of the 400,000 they're needing. And if they continue to need that 400 for the whole year, we would need another 150 in next year's budget for the second half of their year. Second thing I'd like to say is their audit, which they had a good audit, and I appreciate that their numbers came out 5 months after the end of their year, and the city is still waiting for our numbers almost a year later. I think we should be looking at our auditors as well and putting a date certain on that, when that audit needs to be done. We seem to be paying the fee that's required, but yet being put in the back burner of the audit pile, because they seem to think that they can get that to us, and they all have excuses, but you know, CTC and CEC both have theirs by March of the next year. School has theirs 5 months after the end of their year. There's no reason we can't have numbers sooner than 12 months after the end of our fiscal year. It's ridiculous to you know, at that point, it's, you know, a year behind schedule, and it doesn't really matter. But anyway, back to the school budget. So their audit came out, and it did show indeed that they were $1,000 better than what they budgeted, and they didn't budget that year to take any money out of their reserves, which they are limited in their reserves by the state, and they were almost at the maximum. I don't know what percentage you were at, but it was pretty darn close to the maximum in last year, your fiscal year 18. So if you are spending the whole amount in the next year, I assume that means, and from seeing your budget for 19, which is the budget that ends June 30th of 2019, the school will have dwindled its reserves by half, which, all other things being equal, means you spent that much more in fiscal year 2019 than you did in 2018. Because I think you got the same state funding and the same general city funding for the last 3 years. So it's, all other things being equal, looks to me like the school's expenses increased by whatever that amount is. I think it's 350, I'll just say 350,000, give or take 50, pretty close to that. Your budget is not complete yet, or the school's budget is not complete yet for fiscal year 2020, which is what we're saying, what we're hearing, the school will be $400,000 short on. They haven't even done that budget yet. They did a rough estimate, but they haven't, it's not done yet, anyway. So what I would suggest, and I've always supported the schools, said a million times that if the school, you know, I'm the one that told Alex, you know, do your budget the best you can do it, and any needs that you have, come to us, explain to us why you need that money, and exactly where it is, and I think the council will support you. And I think that's the case. I don't think that we should run your reserves to zero, although your audit said you had $1.9 million in cash and equivalents. I know that that isn't all, you know, equivalents isn't necessarily cash, but anyway, you're not broke. I will support the $250,000. I was one of the ones on council when Mr. Bradford stated that he was on council when some of the council put money into the permanent fund to pay for school bonds when the times got short. And now it doesn't seem like council is too supportive, hasn't been anyway, of using any of the permanent fund money to pay for any of those bonds, which Mr. Jones or Councilmember Jones did allude to tonight that he would support that. I'm still not sure that we would have 6 and a mayor or 7 council members to support that. And I agree with Councilmember Gard, moving, a budget is just that. It's a lot of estimates. May or may not be accurate to a T, to within $1,000 or to within $500,000. We just don't, we can't predict what fishing is going to be. We can't predict what sales taxes are going to be. We just can't do that. So, but anyway, I guess to close all of that, I support the schools. I would support the $250,000. I would not support more because that would be more than they are even asking for, because they only need, from my recollection or from my understanding of their budget, this budget only covers the first half of their 2020 fiscal year, covers July through December. We will be doing another budget in next year this time, and by that time we should indeed have their audit, which will tell us if indeed their fund reserves are zero or if they're still 700,000. I don't want the city to become what it has basically for the hospital, a piggy bank, and they can do whatever they want to do, and we need money. I don't agree with that. So I support this amendment, but I would encourage everyone to look closely and assist the school with their budgeting for next year, what programs we need and want to pay for. Get involved. Don't just come to council when it comes time. We need to also go to the school and pay attention to what they're doing as they're doing it, as was commented on earlier. And joint meeting was suggested as well. We can't tell the school what to spend their money on, but we can certainly decide how much money to give them in total and to make their job. I don't want to do anything to make anybody else's job easier, but I do think that the school can spend that money every bit as intelligently as we can at the city level, and for no other reason than to make sure that our kids are funded well. I would support the motion. So that being said, any other comments on the amendment?
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead, James.
Yeah, so just kind of backing up my amendment motion. You know, when we went through this initial round of budget cuts back in 2017, and we had to reduce our budget across the board by $1.3 million, you know, every department had to take a hit. And it was never our intention to leave the Cordova School District at a $1.5 million budgeted amount. We had to ratchet back a couple hundred, 250,000, 252,000, I think it was, dollars that year to the school district. But we had always said, and we being just about everybody that sits around that table tonight, agreed that when our finances returned, that one of the first things we wanted to do was fund the school and get that funding back up. And so rather than stay at this 1.5 level like we have the last two budget years, I want to see that number start trending back up. Now, this is my last time on council, my last budget that I'll deal with, because I'll be termed out here soon. But that trend needs to be in an upward movement, not stagnant.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Go ahead.
Councilmember Jones?
Yeah. I will support this, however the council though decides, but I am still not comfortable in using our budget line for fish tax as a monopoly money and just moving it wherever we want to or need to. And I understand the argument behind where we've averaged and what's been coming in, but it's still just playing with monopoly money, and we've got some other debt hanging out there that we're gonna have to deal with soon. I'd just like to be responsible with dealing with all of it.
Yeah, you're on deck, Councilmember Burton. Councilmember Jones?
Well, my whole point with the fish tax line item, Councilmember Guard, is that when we went through the strategic plan, it was before we were both elected. It was that, 6 months right before the election, and they went through painstaking hour-long meetings. One of them, I think. I mean, I wasn't there in the room for most of it, but wanting to stick to that plan, we wanted to take and put a year's worth of fish tax revenues aside, was the intention of the part of the strategic plan, and to under budget that line item in order to accomplish that. And we thought it was going to take 3 to 5 years in order to build our cash reserves to the point where they were pre-state funding cut, pre-secure rural school funding cut, and an anticipated bad fish tax year that never happened. We had one down year of 700,093 in 16, and then it went up to 1.16 and then 1.48. We've been budgeting 800,000 the whole time. So we've built our cash reserves, and I've been trying to raise this line item up. It seems like every time we turn around and talk about it, because we've had this money coming in and we're not budgeting it for needs of our city, and we're talking about raising other taxes when we are bringing in more than we're showing on our budget. And I know that you can call it monopoly money or whatever you want, but that money did come to us. We did get paid 1.16 and we did get paid 1.48. And I know it's hard to calculate, and moving forward, it's, we don't want to go over our 10-year average because you do have ups and downs in that revenue source, but that's why you use an average, is because then when you have a year that's 1.48, but you spent $1 million of it, you still have 480,000 that can go into cash reserves. And then when you have the year that's 700,000, you can draw from that. And so that would be, I guess, why I'd support the 250,000 level out of the fish tax line item, because we're still 50,000 under our 10-year average.
Councilmember Burton?
Yeah, that's essentially what I was going to say. But the other part of this is when we decided on that $800,000 figure, and we said we could pick any number we wanted, million, 1.1, 800,000, but essentially just pick a flat amount and stick to it. The idea was that
Lost you, James. Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry, somebody else is trying to call me. I had to hang up.
Okay.
The idea was that any money that came in over that budgeted amount for raw fish tax was going to be set aside, put into savings, or some other way of tracking that money and keeping it. Well, so far that hasn't happened. So rather than it being nickel and dimed away, as it seems to be happening, and you know, like I said, I haven't got any answers to my questions at all about where the money has gone the last 2 years. Has come in excess of that amount. Anyway, if we're not going to be putting into the savings, it's going to get nickel and dimed away. I'd rather see it go to the school district than any place else in the Cordova city budget. And that's just, you know, that's it.
Yeah, I would, you know, I somewhat agree with that. It goes back to my statement that I think the school can spend it just as intelligently as we can here. But I'd also like to remind council that, and everybody else out there, that our general fund reserves that are not allocated already to something is nothing. And we don't have anything other than our permanent fund. And we might have $2.5 million in the general reserve fund, but that belongs to a lot of different, you know, the harbor, that belongs to the other enterprise funds. It belongs to, you know, the landfill closing costs. There's you know, the E911 fund is part of that. The ambulance replacement fund is all part of that. We don't have general reserves, and that was part of the idea of, you know, having less or spending less than, or budgeting less than what we really anticipate, was to try to build that up somewhat too. So don't think we've got a pile of cash in reserves either. We don't. You know, it's all assigned to something, and we, you know, just like everybody else, we, you know, we spend from here to there, and hopefully one day we'll be able to pay this back and get to here and get to there. So I appreciate the school district's efforts and especially the administration's, you know, honesty with us that they won't ask for money they don't need or they don't anticipate needing. I would expect that to continue as they work through their budget. I would hope that they don't truly need 1.9, but if that's the case, then, you know, justify it and come back to council next year for the other half of that money that appears may get passed this evening to add on to the school budget. Any other comments regarding the amendment? Yeah, go ahead, Mel.
So I will be supporting this amendment because I think we do need to get some more funding into the schools. Not super comfortable with raising the line item for fish tax. I like the idea of having some money in our reserves when it is over, but I think that's kind of the best place where we can do it. I wish we could stick with the 800,000 for a couple more years, but maybe now's a good time to raise it up to closer to our average, 10-year average. About giving them more than the 250, I guess this discussion is just about the amendment.
Well, if you don't agree with the 250, you can talk about that.
Well, I'm comfortable doing the amendment for the 250, whether we want to talk about doing the other 150 this year or for the next budget cycle. Maybe we can take a look at the budget and see where we can find that.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Councilmember Gard?
All I was gonna say was we've seemed to have had a way ever since we've had it at 800 for fish tax, that anything that's come in over, we've done a good job at having catastrophe du jour come up and eat up and nibble away parts and pieces of it here and there. So I don't know that it's that wise to do it, but I will support the motion so we can get the money to the school district.
There's certainly always something to spend money on, and as Councilmember Burton said, it will get spent one way or the other, nickel and dimed or all at once. So Anyway, any other comments on the amendment?
Can I just ask where you would put it on page 64? Would you put 125 on each of the two half
Where you at?
transfers over? Page 64 of the packet, on the very top are the school transfers for the January, June, and then July, December. Would you add 125 to each?
January through June, so that's the end of their fiscal year.
No, I think it would go on the July through December because this year's budget is budgeted and they're not spending all of their reserves in this fiscal year for them. It's the next fiscal year for them where they're having the shortfall. Am I correct in stating that? Cool.
Yeah,
Alex?
so this, yes, so this budget cycle will be drawing down several $100,000 from our fund balance. If we were to basically cut and paste this year's budget into next year's budget, just as a projected sort of speculation, we would be drawing down our fund balance to negative $40,000, so below zero.
So putting it in the line item, the second half of our year, in the first half of your 2020 budget works for you.
I believe I understand what you're asking, but at the same time, it's a bit of a risk or an unknown. You know, for us to count on a different council coming back and allocating the additional $150,000 per our request is an unknown. It'll be a different council.
A different council won't be looking at either one of these two half years for you. They would be looking at the second half of 2021 or 2020, your fiscal year, and not the first half or the first half of this year or the second half of this current year that you're in. So I'd put it in the second half.
You understand? What did I read it?
Yeah, right.
So not 125 in each, but.
I also understand that it would make you feel a whole lot more comfortable to have an extra $250,000 in this current fiscal year of yours. But I don't see that as an emergency or an item that needs to be in the first half in the budget that you're currently in.
Sure, we're already
You've
drawing
got
down our fund balance
right
in this fiscal year. So yeah, we wouldn't expect it to come in this fiscal year for us, which ends June 30th.
So I put it in July through December in this year. Yeah, Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable for our budget because that fish tax comes in at the end of the year to have it in the second half of the year. That makes sense. So we got our fish tax in October. So, yeah.
And I believe they send a request monthly for a check. So it doesn't come and you don't send that amount over every 6 months, right?
We receive a monthly check from the city for the contribution.
I just have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When the state funding that you guys get, do you get a monthly check from the state too?
Yes.
We do.
Okay, I was just curious because it is broken up into two halves. So like for school transfer January through June is over 800,000, and then school transfer July through December is 656,000. So would it be helpful if those numbers were closer to being the same? So you're getting the same amount every time, or it doesn't really matter?
That's close enough.
Yeah, so if we put it in the second half, then it makes them closer. It makes sense.
Again, the nervousness from my perspective is, what if that doesn't happen? You know, if our need is for an additional 400,000 and the city is considering 250 now, who's to say that the next city council may not see the need like we do and not allocate that additional revenue.
For that matter, the next council could give you minimum. Just kidding.
I think as stated, we don't want to offer our kids the minimum education. Since I'm here, and maybe I would just add, again, the question about where the secure rural schools funds has gone, and the consideration for using that for our request, I think, is a question that's been unanswered.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I've talked about the secure funds force receipts for years since I've been on council. I've always thought that there was a windfall for the city, so to speak, prior to having secure resource funds or force receipts. All of the school was funded through property taxes, essentially, and but we got to remember why the secure rural funds even came into effect. It's because we can't utilize our forests like we can use our other commercial properties, and we can't make money off of them and charge property taxes off of them. So it's essentially the forest property taxes to the city, and that has always been part of the city's contribution to the schools. In fact, last year with that amount, it was almost the exact amount over the minimum that the city was required to give to the schools. So I consider it part of property taxes. So it's spent on the schools. When we got that check, yeah, that hadn't been budgeted for, but has been stated by several people up here. Other expenses come into play, and we have to use our general fund. It's like you have to use your general fund to pay for those. As long as we're giving the schools more than what that secure funds is, then we're performing our legal obligations to that. And I recognize what you're saying is that you think that that's still a windfall to the city, and the city should be able to, give that to the schools. It's not the school's money, it's property taxes to the city. So, I don't know, I can't tell you exactly what other expenses we had that ate up some or most or all of that check that we got in October or whenever that was, November. However, we did give the schools 1.5 million plus the in-kind things, which is, there's some districts, and of many, that can only afford to give their schools the minimum amount. And we don't feel that way here in Cordova. We think that the schools, we're proud of the fact that our schools are number one or number two in almost every category that's ever been studied by U.S. News and World Report or whoever comes up with those surveys, and we want to continue that. It is a draw for people to move to the community, certainly. But I also think we need to be conscious to our taxpayers and make sure that we're doing a good job of everything. And I wish that we were on the same fiscal year, because it's difficult to do half a year and we're asking you for your number now when you're not going to know that number until May, probably. If by then you don't legally have to have it until, I don't know what the date is, May 15th or June 15th or whatever that date is, and you're still working on that, and it's not really fair to any of us to be guessing at this point, but that's what we're doing. And from your audit 6 months ago, you were almost at the maximum. that you could have in your reserves. May not be that way today. I don't know that for sure. I know you've hired a few new people, new positions, things like that all cost more money, you know? That was told to us tonight, what those estimated costs were. So anyway, I support the 250. I don't currently support any more than that for this year. I would hope that whoever's on council, I may not be on council next year either, but I think that the community supports our schools, and everybody that I've ever sat in the 11 years I've been on council at various times over the years has always supported the schools and given the schools what we've never required the school to make cuts that were detrimental to our students. And I don't think that would happen in the future, no matter who sits here. Thanks.
Can I make one quick comment?
Councilmember Gardner.
This is more to the audience than anybody else. We're sitting here battling for dollars, trying to allocate them throughout the community. And it may have been because of poor education on our part, we didn't communicate well. But we went through this whole deal last year trying to come up with some new revenues and a fair way to spread them across all sectors of the population in Cordova, and they got shot down bad. So we basically blew a huge hole in our budget in the middle of the year. So next time this comes up, we all need to start paying more attention and get better educated on it. And if you don't like what we're doing when we're doing it, come up with some better suggestions. But as we can all see, we need more dollars to do what we're doing if we want to keep doing it. And if not, we just got to figure out what to lop off. Those are my 2 cents.
Any other comments on the amendment? That's adding $250,000 to our raw fish tax, adding $250 to the expenses to the school district for the second half of the year. I think we're done, Alex. Thank you. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Thank you for your comments, and we of course know that the council and others support the school district, and you're obviously faced with some tough decisions. In regard to the secure rural schools, I would just encourage council to make sure that those funds that have been received have been distributed to the 4 areas of the city in which they are intended: schools, roads, emergency services, and other projects. Thank you.
Thank you. So the $250,000 in both of those, that's also going to change our resolution by $250,000, right?
I don't know.
Well, yeah, it would add $250,000 to that number.
Put it where? Over here.
Well, the amount is no longer $15,288,342. Lost my phone today, so I don't have a calculator, but add $250,000 to that.
And it's got to be somewhere else in these numbers.
Well, it's gonna be,
It'd be that bottom right.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to give staff the leeway to get it right.
15,538, 342. It'll be under the general fund revenue.
and appropriations.
Yes.
Okay, any other comments, discussion? We know what we're voting on? Roll call, please.
So on the amendment
It's on
to
the amendment.
Resolution 12-1833, the amendment to it. Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
James Weiss,
Yes.
James Burton.
Sure.
The amendment passed.
Okay, we're back on the main motion. Any other things on the budget? Hearing none from the table, I will take liberty again, as a council member, not as the vice chair, just to make a couple of general comments. Our 2020 plan had us at 10.6, shooting for 10.6. And we're now at 11 point oh something, almost 11.1, which is almost $500,000 more than what we were shooting for in our 2020 plan. I recognize that maybe the 2020 plan had that as a revenue number, but and the 11.1 is an expenditure number here, but anyway, that's just a comment. I'm not comfortable with that. We're overshooting our own targets, and it doesn't make me feel comfortable. The other thing I don't like about this budget, which is where I might have come up with some of the 250,000, is the streets budget being 25 to 28% over what it was last year. I realize that that's, they gotta rebuild a loader for $100,000, and they think they need a new sanding truck or a sanding box for a sanding truck, or a sanding box and a sanding truck, or something is what all of that extra capital money is for that department. But and maybe they need it, maybe they don't. Maybe I've been involved too long and know too many of the historical things that have gone on. But the loader, for instance, grinds my gizzard just a little bit, because the city sold a perfectly good loader for $13,500, or maybe it was $15,000 a few years ago. Tires alone were worth 20 grand. The bucket was worth another $5. Yeah, we sold it at sealed bids for $15,000, and I can tell you the buyer of that hasn't done a thing with it, hasn't done a thing to it, and has used it all the time for 3 or 4 years or whatever it's been since then. So, it's not, this equipment that we have isn't disposable, one-time use, throw it away type things, and I recognize that they're trying to fix this one. But just like with the garbage truck, that kind of hurt a little bit too. But our maintenance department is going to have to do some work as well. And I'm not making a motion to change anything at this point in time. I'm just making general comments at this point in time. If we don't pass this budget tonight, then what you have in your hand in front of you, barring a special meeting in the next few days with some real answers, this is what gets approved by default. Anyway, I'm okay with the budget as is, as we amended it. But I think a lot of work still needs to be done. I think if the city can't run on 10 million, or even 10 and a half, now we're at $11 million a year, then I think we're spending the money in the wrong places, or doing something wrong. So anyway, I'll support the budget as is there. Councilmember Guard.
Okay, we're back to my issue that I hit every time. Not funding maintenance. You go through this budget and look at almost every department line. When we get down to the end, you see this little number in parentheses. It says that's money we're short. And if you look right up at the depreciation and amortization line, you're pretty close to the same thing in almost every department, which means we're doing very little maintenance and we're putting no money away to take care of that in the future. So I'm all in favor of fixing a motor if we gotta fix a motor. Deferred maintenance costs you way more in the long run when you let it go too long, just taking care of stuff as you go. So that is my thing I harp on twice a month.
Anybody else have any comments on the budget as amended? Councilmember Jones.
Well, we worked on this budget for 4 months. We've had 8 different meetings, workshops, and while I appreciate the school district's plea for more funding, and they did have representatives here at the majority of those meetings, it would have been nice to have more public participation at those meetings. We look at empty rooms a lot, and then on the eve of passing the final budget, we get a full room of people. And I appreciate you guys all coming out. It would have been nice to hear some of these things when we were going through the whole process, not just when it's time to approve it, because then we can plan a little bit better. We could have, moved things around a little bit more instead of trying to come up with $400,000 right at the end of that. So I just couldn't figure out where we were going to come up with $400,000, because I'm not willing to go over the 10-year average on the fish tax. And as far as the secure rural schools, that money came in and already went to the school. It's part of the 1.5 that they're already given. That's how I look at it. It comes in and goes straight to the school. And like Councilmember Allison said, it's about the amount over the minimum that was already given. So that's how I look at it. That money is already spent. It's already part of the school appropriation. And so raising the appropriation, we had to find a new revenue source, and that for me was the fish tax. And I'm definitely going to be here for another year, unless I get recalled. But I plan on being here for another year, and we've had some discussions. We had 20 meetings on revenue. Those got shot down. We've had some discussions about some new revenue, and we'll have a pending agenda here at the end of the meeting, and I'm, interested in some of the ideas that were brought forth tonight. And while I'm known as a very anti-tax person, there are certain taxes that I could see myself supporting, and I think I'll talk about that more at pending agenda. So I'm going to support approving the budget as amended. While I agree with Councilmember Allison, there's always different ways we can do better and save money and appropriate money to better locations. I think that we worked really hard on this. Alan worked really hard on this. Staff worked really hard on this. And I appreciate everybody's effort, and ready to vote.
One more time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with you on, where our ultimate budget number should be. I don't think it should be at $11 million. I think it should be at 10.5 or something like that. But, we pared down this budget to about the $10 million mark here a couple of years ago. And since then, revenues have gone up, and there's not an identifiable place in the budget where things have changed, where council's input has really been, solicited to put the money where we want it. And this school contribution is a chance to change that now. As far as, department by department line items, there are some things in here that are different. We've got some equipment that's being bought for the streets. We had a sander, and then there's $100,000 for something else, and then we had a shop bay floor that was going to be done. So, there are projects in here too. It's not just an operating budget of 11.1 or wherever we're at now. So, just wanted to clarify that real quickly.
Yeah, I get you. I think council understands that. Councilmember Jones.
Alan looked like he had something he wanted to say. I'm just curious what it was.
At the risk of extending the meeting, this is a $10.3 million budget. It's a $10.233 million budget. If you look at last year, we had 10.374. In an effort this year, all things being equal, my suggestion this year, because we did not have the effort during the summer and the fall to discuss nor raise taxes to provide additional revenue. Once we understood that the SRS funds, the timber receipts, were reauthorized, I suggested, which was against the original policy that we were talking about, to place those funds back in as a line item in the budget, raising the budget to 10.8 million, so we could, one, lower the administrative allocated costs by 50,000, which was one of the things folks talked about, so that we could do a couple $100,000 in projects. While this number looks like 10.8 and it goes to 11.1 or 11.1 with the additional 250,000, this is a $250,000 budget, and I don't think it's too far from where we started with the strategic discussion. We're no different than we were there. We're basically bare bones. We've added a little travel back in, but we're bare bones, and we're not doing any significant maintenance nor replacement to any of our fleet vehicles or buildings. Right now, we're still scrimping to buy $12,000 worth of controls to keep the fire department from either running them out or freezing them out. So, if it appears that this has changed course, nothing has changed course. The funds that we've received, and Councilman Burton, I will get you an answer. But the funds that we've received in the fish tax, in our central treasury funds that are our cash flow, in addition to all of the other funds that we have to maintain funds in, the cash flow, I was told, was at an extraordinarily low level. And these funds replaced a lot of that. In addition, during that same time, we've spent an additional $724,000 in cash. So, you know, dollar in, dollar out, and if you look at it all in a microcosm of any individual expenditure, you can suggest to yourself that we're in great shape, good shape, worse shape, but we're pretty even. I think the test that I've tried to have you all look at is when someone asks us for something, we apply a standard to them of verification that says, here's what we need and here's why we need it. And that's what you consider going forward with. And that's the standard that we should apply to anybody who's requesting money, because remember, 43% of all of our money is running someone else. And that's a very, very slippery slope and scary platform that we're standing on and being looked to make sure that it doesn't crack and cave in. So unless we get through a revenue picture this year and we do something in terms of those revenues, and we don't do the school resource fund, because the idea was to backdoor it, save it, save it, save it, save it, so eventually we'd have money that you could do something big with. You'll be at a $10.2 million budget next year, and that's where this one should be, absent that number. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none, then we will,
Roll call on the main.
yeah, but just want to clarify that you will change or add the 250,000 in the other places on the resolution that it needs to be added.
I will.
I think there's 2 places on the actual resolution.
Yep.
3 places maybe.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Make sure that those get done.
Okay,
Clerical.
and then if I can get you to sign it tomorrow, that would be very helpful.
No problem.
Okay, so on the budget, the main motion as amended, James Weiss,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
James Burton,
Yes.
Jeff Guard.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Resolution 12-1834. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, adopting city service fees, rates, and charges for the 2019 calendar budget.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded, Councilmember Jones.
Well, they're all going up. And I feel the pain that everybody in the audience has about fees, taxes, everything going up. But as Councilmember Guard likes to point out, deferred maintenance costs more, and this is an attempt to build these fund balances for our enterprise funds, so that way they can be self-sufficient and be able to maintain what we have. We've lost the baler. We had to dip into our savings, our permanent fund, just to buy a trash truck. These are all things that these enterprise funds should be able to purchase and repair on their own, and that has not been the case for many years. So I'll be voting in favor despite heartburn over raising rates.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, just echoing what Councilman Jones said, that rates are going up, but it's with the idea that hopefully these funds will be able to have a little, to pay for their services, but then also be able to have money standing by when other issues come up.
Other comments around the table? Councilmember Burton?
No comment. I agree with what's been said already.
Yeah, I too agree with, I guess, what's been said. I appreciated the comment about folks on a fixed income. I can relate to that. It doesn't make it any cheaper to live and breathe the air that we have here, but it is necessary to withstand a future a whole lot worse. So I would support it too. Any other comments? Hearing none, can we do a roll call on this too, please?
Yes. So on resolution 12-1834, David Allison,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Helena Meyer,
Yes.
James Weiss,
Yes.
James Burton,
Yes.
Ken Jones.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is resolution 12-1835, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, designated capital improvement projects.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilmember Jones?
Well, I wrote an email to Susan, Clay, and Alan. I asked for it to be included in the packet so that we, dotted all of our I's and crossed our T's as far as communication from me to other council members. So it was in the packet, and this is, just a starting template of some of the changes I would like to make. After the discussion with our lobbyist, I think that we should probably move school repairs further up the list than I had written in my email. And I also forgot, and I was just remiss in not including the public safety building. That's still a community priority, as I understand. And yeah, so move to get it on the table for discussion. And yeah, this is kind of what I would like to see. I'd like to see shipyard building added back to the list. It was a priority for a number of years. And I think that it needs to be a priority again. Seen a definite decline in the amount of activity happening at the shipyard since the windstorm. And also, we've got staff working really diligently and doing a great job on writing grants, trying to get us road improvements and sidewalk improvements. And I think it could help our chances to have those specific projects that they're going after listed on our list. Namely the City Center staircase and the Adams Street 6th and 7th Street sidewalk drainage project that we were briefed on, I think 2 meetings ago. And as far as the South Harbor replacement, I added J float. And I just, broke down the South Fill expansion, Shipyard Fill expansion, and Harbor Basin expansion to separate items. And maybe they may be able to go for other match funding outside of the Tier 1, Tier 2 Harbor Grant state thing we're going after, so.
Do you want to revise this list then, or do you want to just approve the list and bring it back for changes? Is that what you'd like to do?
No, I think what we should do is once we get done discussing a little bit the list that we've currently got, I believe that somebody will probably make a motion
Okay.
to amend it or to change it.
Okay.
That's where I think we should go. I don't think we need to approve a bad list and then come back and do it again. I don't know if the maker, we're ready to make an amendment yet or not, but I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I guess I would amend my motion to follow the template in the email. I'm not sure if I can do that, but with the addition of 6 public safety building and then moving school repairs from number 4 up to number 2.
And then renumbering the rest.
And renumbering the rest, yep.
Schools to 2.
So public safety would be 7. Yeah, I think that's appropriate. This motion's been made to amend the list to the list that Jones provided with school repairs, move to number 2, everything else renumbered, and adding number 7, public safety building.
I think it's 6, public
So,
safety.
yes.
6, public safety building.
Comes right after 5.
Okay, yeah.
So that is an amendment.
We want to talk about deleting that Sawmill Avenue extension that was.
Well, we need a second on that. We need a second on that.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Then yeah, further amendments would be acceptable. Councilmember Jones?
Oh, Burton's amendment.
Okay, was it, so your motion, James, was to remove the Sawmill Avenue extension?
Yeah, it's been on there for eons. It just kind of seems to float around on there, and
been moved and seconded to amend.
Never really talked about it.
Amend the amendment by deleting the Sawmill Avenue extension. Any discussion on that particular item? Just the Sawmill Avenue extension?
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
What exactly is it?
That's the path that would lead from the high school to AC. Basically, there's a
That's what I was thinking, okay.
there's a.
So just call D
I see.
South Fill? South Fill what?
But that's what it was originally meant for, is to
South Fill extension or expansion.
alleviate the students having to walk around.
I guess the one reason why I included it in there is when you go after these grants, there's different criteria that they look for on a project. One of them being safe routes to school, walking accessibility, that type of stuff. And so part of the Sawmill Avenue extension project, as I recall just from going back and reading the old comprehensive plan, this Southfield development plan, all these, numerous public meetings, it was always on these lists as a public priority from a long time ago. Maybe it's not going to be on our current comprehensive plan, but that we don't know yet. So just going off of the one that was approved in 2008, it was a community priority, and that's why I kind of put it together with the Southfill extension, because it could give merit to have a safe route to school in that kind of grant application, or that project might make our chances of getting it funded better.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily have to be a road.
No,
either.
It doesn't have to be a road extension, just fill so that there could be it has to be as wide as a road though, because you have to be able to get emergency vehicles. But, I've heard walking trail, I've heard Sawmill Avenue extension. There's been different ways to skin the cat. But it was on every community plan meeting in the last 15 years. So that's why I kept it on here, but possibly the community's priorities have changed. But we'll know in July. We can always take it off next year. It's probably not gonna get funded this year anyway. It's just, I was just reorganizing, and I thought it would be prudent to pair it with the Southville extension that has also been floated around. So.
I think that's a good point, the safe routes
Mr. Vice Mayor.
thing and things like that. So, yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Burton.
I think, yeah, actually, Kenny's right. And one of the things that Sam said on the grant for 6th and 7th, or 7th and 8th, or whatever it was one of the things that made that a success was walkability. And I think maybe making that a subcategory of the Southville thing, or keeping it on there for that purpose might be a good idea, just for that, just for that grant purpose when it comes to walkability. So I don't know, maybe I'll withdraw that amendment if that's what we think is appropriate.
Concurrence of the second.
With concurrence of the second, withdrawn, or otherwise voted down.
I don't care, but I can think of lots better things to spend money on.
Okay, so
Leave
that
it on, the second will concur.
Okay. Okay, so we're back to the amendment, which is to replace the list and renumber and add public safety building in. Anybody understand that, or do I need to go in that more detail? Melina?
I would kind of like to move public safety building a little higher on the list rather than the lowest point. I don't know if our numbering,
Where do you suggest to put it? Or are you making an amendment to put
I
it?
think it should be 3 or 4 after the harbor, schools. I think maybe 3, but I would say 4 if somebody wants to.
I would be open to having it at 4, in between road improvements and the shipyard building.
Does the order make a difference when we give it to our lobbyists? Does the order matter? Or is it just more about like what funding sources are available, so just having it on the list means it's a priority?
It doesn't matter a lot, but some of the legislatures would, if they have money, they're gonna say, what's your top 3 priorities? What's your top?
often the number 1 is what matters.
Yeah, number 1 really matters, but.
Okay, so I mean, I was just wondering if it's worth it to go.
So that was a friendly amendment, I think. Who made the second? Councilmember Jones's.
Meyer made the amendment.
Okay, so let's just make that a friendly amendment to move public safety to 4.
I just think at the bottom of the list looks a little like it's not a priority at all.
With that, then we don't have to.
And it was 4 before. I missed it. That was, I didn't mean to take it off the list.
Public safety is 4, road is now 5, hospital is, correct?
Okay,
That's what I have.
sounds good to me.
And then it looks like we're also taking, for the original resolution, it says ferry trail on number 6. What is that?
I don't know anything about it.
We'll see what the comprehensive plan comes out and then amend it next year. If that comprehensive plan says something about a ferry trail.
That's just the only difference between the resolution one and Ken's email.
There's a member of the audience who would like to comment if council doesn't have any objections to that. Kristen?
Sure, I was just gonna offer that the ferry trail was a project that we talked about at one point, so that there was a safe walking route from the ferry terminal into town and it could connect with that sidewalk that starts at whatever
The bottom of First Street.
Yeah, right, so that's what that meant.
Yeah, apologize, James and Clay. Kristen Carpenter just was telling us, reminding us what that project was, just a safe walking way to get from the ferry to town.
So should we put it under 3C? Under road improvements and sidewalk improvements?
So we,
That's now 5.
That's now 5?
yeah, 5C.
5C?
Oh,
Yeah.
not a bad idea.
Yeah,
We're just kind
Yeah,
of friendlying that.
An amendment again?
So nice when you guys are friendly.
This whole list may change when we see the comprehensive plan too, so we'll see what happens with that.
Okay.
Okay, any other changes, discussion before we put this one out?
Call for the question.
Question been called. Objection? Hearing none. All those, do we need to do a roll call on this?
No, this is just on the amendment.
This is on the amendment, okay.
Okay.
So this is on the amendment to replace the list, and we'll have to vote again. So all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we're back to the main motion, which is essentially what we just discussed. Question been called. Objection? Hearing none. Roll call, please. We want to do a roll call?
You don't have to.
Let's just vote on it. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. You're where I'm at.
Item 20.
Okay, resolution 12-1836, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, reinstating the E911 surcharge implemented in resolution 081049 and repealing resolution 031220, which suspended the surcharge pending the acquisition and activation of an enhanced 911 system.
So move.
second.
It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Schaefer.
I'm supportive of this resolution. It's been talked about for a while, and it'd be good if we could really get moving on this and collaborate with safety, CTC, CWC, etc. I did have a question about it. If someone had a cell phone plan and a landline plan, like would they be charged double, or would there be ways around, I don't know, not exceeding some maximum charge per person or per residence, just so it doesn't become a burden?
I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head, but I think it's a per line charge. And then there are waivers that exist that can be applied for and so forth. I think, this is mentioned a couple times as we were preparing the budget. And the reason I put this in there was to utilize the monies that we currently have, which is about $64,000, and then begin accumulating revenue so that we could embark upon the addressing, the E911, all of the things that we need to do. However, we're not going to start tomorrow. We're going to reformulate the committee, and then the Chief Hicks will be working on it and start putting back together the plan. And you'll see that as it comes forward and the expenditures that go with it. We're currently doing dispatching for Whittier and through Girdwood, so some of those funds might be available to us as well. So that's why we're here.
Are we coordinating with CTC and
Meg.
Are we coordinating with CTC and?
Yes, we will be. Everybody who's involved in this, we will coordinate with and make sure that we get steps done that are for the benefit of the entire community.
I have one question about how the $2 was calculated. Is that how much it's going to need to run the system for the future or to get it going?
Well, I think we just implemented the $2. At some point, we're going to have a better handle on what's going to take to run the system, and then the surcharge would be adjusted appropriately. But I think in the beginning, having the full surcharge helps us get the startup money to do hardware, addressing, and things that are very critical in getting the system in place.
Okay, I'll take the liberty, I guess, at this point in time to say my piece as a council member regarding this. I am not in support of the resolution as it stands this evening for a couple of reasons. Number one is when this resolution 03-1220 was passed and approved back in whenever it was, 2012, March of 2012, it was resolved that this would not be put back in place until an enhanced 911 system has been acquired and activated. We don't even have a plan in hand yet. We don't have a budget in hand yet. We've kept the public's money for 6 years and done absolutely nothing with it for those 6 years. And now we're gonna say we're gonna start taking it again and do what? Have another committee discuss it for a while and decide the same thing we decided last time as the committee, of which I was a member, that we were gonna get the addressing done and use some of that money to either hire somebody or hire some company to work on the addressing. And that was the end of the committee. Did the committee ever see a quote for addressing? Did we ever see an RFP out for addressing? Maybe I missed something somewhere along the lines. I haven't been exactly out of the hospital for the last 6 years, but I just don't see it yet. Now, if I had, with this resolution, if I had a budget and a plan that, you know, in March we're gonna do this and we're gonna get quotes from this and that, and we need to start collecting money again to make this pay for itself, then I would support it. But this time I just can't for that reason. The other reason is that last year's legislative session, there was quite a bit of discussion at the state level about a statewide 911 system. And I would like a report from somebody, maybe Bitney or somebody can tell us if that's something they're looking at, because I certainly wouldn't want to spend $400,000 on a system for Cordova and then have the state come in and say, oh, we're doing this statewide, and it's, you know, it's a completely different system than your EHR system at the hospital. We know how that went. You know, spend $1.5 million and a year later, or 2 years later, it's no good. We got to buy this other system for another $1 million. And who knows if that's going to work, because we're getting all kinds of reasons. Anyway, I do not support reenacting this surcharge until we get all of that together. And I think, indeed, addressing should come next. That's what the committee decided on. So this money that we have in hand already could be used to, I don't know if it can do all of that addressing. I'm sure prices have gone up in 6 years. But can certainly get us a good start on that, or at least to a point where we know what it's going to cost to get that piece of the puzzle done, and we can have a budget for it and get it all lined up. So anyway, for those reasons, I do not support passing this resolution tonight. Any other comments? Oh, Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, I understand not wanting to step on like the state's toes or get in, you know, move ahead of them if they are going to be moving ahead on a statewide E911 system. But then going back to like not collecting the surcharge again until an E911 system is acquired and implemented, you need funding to acquire and implement and plan. And so funding that process, I think, would be important.
I don't disagree that funding is going to be needed, and I think that with this guaranteed revenue source, I think that there's a lot of other funding methods. In fact, one of the funding methods that we looked at last time was the company that sold the 911 system was willing to finance it, knowing that we were getting this $2 per charge for the fees. So there are other options of funding it. We could, for that matter, we could fund it with another investment from our permanent fund if, charge of 10% interest or whatever, is reasonable at the time. So there are other ways to pay for it, but I just don't feel comfortable passing it. Charging our membership or charging our constituents $2 per line. Some of them, in my house, that's $20 a month extra in charges between cell phones and landlines and computer lines and all of that. So I just until the city has a plan, I'm not in favor of it. So, Councilmember Gardner.
I don't know that we're under any kind of gun for this, and I know I did get an email today from CTC that they'd like to sit down and talk about a planning process with this, so maybe it would be better to direct staff to, we could table this and have staff bring us a plan, sit down with CTC or whoever the other involved parties are, and do some budgeting to kind of figure out what we're needing to raise for dollars for this, so we got an idea of what we're doing going into it.
That motion to refer.
Second.
Moving and seconded to refer this to staff and work on things. Any other discussion on that?
I just have a question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So am I misunderstanding though, this would just enable us to collect the surcharge? This doesn't have a timeline on it, or it's not like we wouldn't be starting the surcharge collection tomorrow or in January. It'd be just opening up that line to have available once the planning gets going, right? And then a plan is put in place and waivers before a surcharge. So I'm fine to refer it to staff, but I just want to make clear, like, this, we would just be collecting money immediately without any plan. Or...
My thought is that I'd rather keep that decision in our hands and not just leave it to staff to start collecting money whenever they want, because they collected $76,000 or whatever's in that amount now and have kept it for 6 years and haven't done a thing with it. And that's not right, in my opinion. So on the motion to refer to staff, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Unfinished business, Prince William Sound Borough Formation, Economic Feasibility Phase 1, information for discussion. And I believe Barb, Jewel, are you chairing that committee?
There wasn't a formal decision, but they asked that I speak and represent their views.
Okay, if you could come up and join us, I appreciate some information. I tried to go to the meeting and wasn't able to, and would like to hear somebody's comments on it.
Sure, and I think I wanted to start by first saying how much we appreciated the work that staff did to make sure we were connected, had information, respond to our questions, and help us frame our conversation. So I really appreciate Leif's work and Susan's, and please, I hope I didn't forget anybody. So we had a total of 3 meetings, I believe, an initial, then one that we participated in the presentation that was done through YouTube out of Whittier, and then we met for about an hour and 15 minutes this week just to go over that presentation and thoughts. I think that where the advisory group landed is that based on the information that was presented, and it was a fairly narrow question that was asked, that in certain circumstances a borough is financially feasible in terms of it would pay for itself, and it might in certain circumstances reduce the tax burden of citizens in Cordova. The group felt that there were a significant amount of unanswered questions and a lot of intangibles that did not get considered in this first look, that didn't allow us to make any firm recommendations or even anything around a yes or no. There are certain circumstances where it looks like it could be feasible and it might save taxpayers in Cordova some money, but a lot of unanswered questions.
So is the committee pretty much done, or is the study done now and?
The first phase study is done. As far as I know, their presentation and really their deliverable was that Excel spreadsheet that you can navigate around and change out parameters. There's a phase 2 that they discussed in their proposal that has not yet been funded, and looked like there was a significant amount of money that would be required to fund that if all of the groups involved decided to go forward, would have to be decisions made on who was gonna pay for what and how much. And so I think the advisory council is actually, the advisory group is probably waiting for direction from the council based on this information as to what they would like us to do.
You know, was the Girdwood Governance Association or whoever that group is, where are they at with it? Are they just still analyzing things and decide what they want to do, or?
I haven't heard
Just
any
as a
firm
council
decision
member,
made by any individual groups. I have to say I had to step out from that day-long presentation. I couldn't sit in the whole thing, but I don't believe that any, Girdwood Governance Association has wanted this. They want this. They've been firm about wanting this. I haven't heard anything different in their comments going forward, but I didn't hear anyone else having made any firm decisions yet either.
Councilmember Jones.
The Girdwood Governance Association isn't the authority body for Girdwood, correct?
Correct.
So that authority came out and said no.
I'm not sure that's accurate. I don't think they've had an actual public hearing or made a decision about it. They have identified the fact that the Girdwood Governance Association is not the governing body of Girdwood. And what I read was that they had not had the opportunity to comment, that it hadn't been brought to them as a body. And so they certainly seemed to indicate that they were not excited about it, but they have not yet taken a stance, which I think is interesting.
What they did say in some minutes of their meeting, the governing body, was that they were interested in the results. So.
And I believe they did attend this Whittier meeting that
Correct.
was YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess I'd be interested in hearing thoughts from everybody that had attended that meeting. In particular, the Girdwood governing body, whatever that's called, and the Valdez sent their manager there, I believe.
Valdez has already had a resolution saying no.
I know, but that was before this meeting as well, and they sent somebody. They sent their city manager to this meeting. So I'd just be interested in their comments. I'm not gonna vote on anything. I don't know if this is an action item.
It is
tonight. It's not an action item, so I certainly wouldn't be willing to vote on anything this evening without hearing more.
And I think the advisory council tried to be pretty careful to look at it in the lens of how does this affect Cordova? So we weren't asking too many questions about what Girdwood wanted or what Valdez wanted. You know, we saw our job as really looking at it as how it impacted Cordova. So we tried to stick with that.
I think it might, who has possession of this Excel spreadsheet that they created?
We have, yeah.
Would it be worth like sitting down and working through it? Because I did attend the morning session and it was really fast and they're introducing the modules that they've made, and you can adjust all sorts of cells just depending on all these different scenarios. But it was really fast because they're working through the document for everyone and doing different examples. But it might be nice to have some sort of session where we like sit down and work through what we see as possible scenarios together, and nothing would hurt to have a better understanding of the product. What it's saying.
I think there's probably a couple of pretty significant outstanding questions, and one, of course, is the boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 44 versus...
44, the 12, if Valdez is going to be forced to be a part of it or not. Are there more advantageous boundaries for Cordova if a borough was to be pursued? And then an outstanding question is how do you measure those intangibles?
Were you able to attend the afternoon session with
I was
the
not.
Board Commission? Okay.
And certainly Leif did.
I was there for
Lena,
the
you were there.
afternoon too. The afternoon was the local boundary commission presentation mainly, and they talked about the standards of a borough, and basically said Prince William Sound meets, from the surface of it, looks like it meets all the standards. Whether an application came through, if that application met the standards, that would have to be looked at deeper, because they're just looking at it pretty blanketly right now without any kind of petition in front of them. There's no petition for Prince William Sound. It's been completely just exploring it. And so at the end of the meeting, the interested parties did come up and talk and said their position, and it sounded like everybody was in the same boat as us. No one really had a position. Even Girdwood Governing Board, they even came up and they said, you know, we're not saying Girdwood or us or even are all for borough having a government, but we looked at our options, and this was one that we thought about exploring. So I thought that was interesting too. Valdez, their manager, was there, and they said they're there just to listen to. So seemed like pretty much everyone was there, but didn't really have strong opinions about it. Just kind of like we're exploring it and waiting to see what. And people were interested what Cordova Council was going to say about it too. They were looking for our comment as well.
Rudderless ship. Oh, looking for a leader. Councilmember Gard.
What we would, and I could be wrong, but my impression was that when we went into this as a body here, all we were trying to do was collect information to find out if anything had changed that made something more advantageous or less advantageous, anything more connected or less connected than before, and what all was out there that we had from the last study we looked at from 10 years ago. And it was an update, and basically it looks like we're still sitting in the same place we were then. I don't see enough here to make it worth rolling the dice on.
But it doesn't sound like there's even a proposal in front of us at this point in time. So it looks like we're waiting for some more information. I do agree with Councilmember Schaefer that maybe a work session to get Leif to play with those numbers with us for a while. Some evening might be interesting if nothing else. But
yeah, I mean, we could look and see if Information Insights could do a little webinar type deal with us. I'm not sure if they would charge extra, but it would be a couple hours of their time, I would think. You know, they did it in a meeting, and we can forward the calculator to you guys as well. The committee has it, so.
yeah, sounds good. I think if you can forward that to us and then see if it's going to cost. I don't want to spend any money at this point in time, but maybe they'll be willing to throw it in on the cost of it if it's done over the web or something. They don't have to have any travel costs or anything.
Yeah, and you know, just to add one more thing is, at any point, we can say, no, we're done, we don't want to have this conversation anymore. So, you know, if that ever seems to be the opinion of the majority of council, you know, we should probably move in that direction so we stop spending time and money looking at it. Until we hear that, we're going to continue having conversations and talking about it, you know, looking at it a little bit deeper.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Jones.
I move to instruct staff to draft a resolution against funding further studies on a PWS borough and to take a position against borough formation.
I'd like to amend the motion to add.
There is no second.
Yeah, but this isn't really an action item on the agenda.
I can make a motion.
You can do it at pending agenda, I guess.
Yeah, pending agenda, you
can
can,
make a motion at any time.
Second.
not if anybody doesn't think that a motion was coming. That's misleading the public. People thought it was an informational item.
wait to take it.
At pending agenda, you can ask for something to come at a future meeting, which would be a similar thing.
Yeah.
But at pending agenda, it's more.
We'll just add it to pending agenda, a request to the next thing. I think that's, I agree that the public didn't have any opportunity to comment on that. Anything further regarding the borough? Appreciate you guys' work on the committee, and like I said, I don't, we're not sure where this is going either, so, but we appreciate your work and your analysis, and if we get something set up where we can do some kind of a webinar or training session or something, we'll certainly invite you guys.
Great, thank you. And I think Liv's suggestion is a good one because it's a fairly complex calculator, and it's really nice to have. It's helpful. It's certainly helpful to us to have their guidance. Thank you.
Okay. No miscellaneous business. Council approval of the city manager bonus and amendments. Just for clarification, what we're approving tonight is the city manager's contract. After the last executive session, we moved to direct the mayor to proceed as we discussed, which the bonus and the leave issues were part of that, and that has already been done. So we're looking for a motion to approve the amended city manager's contract.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Councilmember Weiss?
I think our city manager was given a fair evaluation. So I had time to chew on this and deliberate it, and no one's ever gonna be happy if something like this comes out, but yeah, I'm ready to vote for it.
Hey, Schaefer?
Yeah, just really, we had a evaluation with the manager. We talked about this for hours, and we were all in agreement, and
Councilmember.
Just one point of order, page 128, paragraph 2, second line down, states $120,000, and then in parentheses have $126,000 next to it. Which one of these are we using? Okay, I just wanted clear, because we got two different numbers stated here, so.
Yeah, we need to correct that.
What's that?
I said, this is really the mayor's agenda item, and then the attorney.
We'll correct that with the attorney.
So,
Okay.
It was 5%.
No, that's fine, just saying, we got two different numbers stated there.
Yep, I agree. We will fix that with the attorney. Any other comments? Hearing none, can we get a roll call, please?
on agenda item 22. James Weiss.
Yes.
James Burton.
Yes.
Melina Meyer.
yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
David Allison.
Yes.
Ken Jones.
Yes.
Jeff Gard.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Item 23, council action to declare a city-owned property as available agricultural lots.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded to declare these as available. Planning Commission has also done so. Any discussion? Who was making?
Who did that?
Made the motion.
Gard.
Councilmember Gard,
Okay.
comments?
It's doing nothing sitting in our hands, get it in somebody else's hands, so they can do something with it.
Spending money in our hands.
Councilmember Jones might put it like that.
Sell it.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? Does this require just Boyce. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Enthusiastic guys all the way around. 24, council action on disposal and method of disposal on the Cordova lots.
I move to dispose of lots 3 and 4, block 6, original town site as outlined in Cordova Municipal Code 5.22.060B by option 2, requesting sealed proposals to lease or purchase the property.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Councilmember Schaefer.
Just to reiterate what we just talked about, sell it.
Councilmember Gard.
Concurring with the Planning and Zoning Commission on what their recommendation was.
I will agree. I think there was one of these documents somewhere said something about the city will require demolition, something like that. I wouldn't put that in the RFP. I would like, somebody might have historical money and want to spend a ton of it to fix something up, and I don't want to preclude that by requiring something else. That's the likely solution, but I'd like to see proposals on what people are interested in doing there. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Council direction, the manager regarding Mike Smith's request already the polar bear, and Mike Smith is in the audience. If I could request him to come up and join us and give us a synopsis of his request, because I'm not sure I understand the total request at this point in time.
I'm just coming up to speed myself, so to speak. The official letter said proof of insurance, side tilings, mortgage application. So with regard to so it looked like, pursuant to the letter, the sticking point was proof of insurance. Did anybody get an email this morning? I don't know if you've had.
I got the email, but I couldn't read the attachment.
See, you got a lot on your plate, but, well. Right. I see you got a lot on your plate. I'll just try to do a quick summary of the thoughts. So with the polar bear, we got various times EPA, ADEC, FDA, ADF&G, USCG. These are all the regulations, procedures agencies should deal with. And additionally, we were governed by the Alaska Workers' Compensation Act. So all these things are basically dealing with public safety, and they have different ways to go around with public safety, some of which, for instance, Coast Guard is an OSHA, the physical situation on the boat, what might or may not happen, and what you have to respond to it. So that's a physical response to a hazard. Like the FDA is a procedural response on the boat and the way you process food. And the is the payments and insurance of the workers. So that's, if something does happen, then, they get their wages and they got medical coverage and stuff like that. So did all that stuff. But at the moment, getting a official policy from a broker has been an issue. I've been trying to do that. Survey's not available at the moment. Surveyor's not available at the moment in this situation. So I simply haven't been able to do it. But then I finally realized that, well, what we have been doing when we're not active is that we are self-insured. So self-insurance for many things is a normal thing. And even under the Alaska State Workman's Comp, you can be self-insured if you meet certain qualifications. So the self-insurance can be a better deal for everybody. So the self-insurance is if you can deal with the situation. So what I was trying to delineate is that of the situation that both faces, we're ahead of the game to be self-insured. So previously, I sent some information on the Coast Guard administrative order. So their agreement that Polar Bear was in compliance with their administrative order. So there, the Coast Guard is about the physical situation. So they wanted the fuel off the boat and the other hazmat stuff. So when that stuff's gone, the concern with the oil spill disappears because you can't spill it because it's not there. There's one broker, he said, well, with that size of boat, one thing, you need a $500,000 policy for hazmat. Well, if the stuff's not on the boat, it's not a hazard because you can't spill it. So I kind of wrote up, I think on this one is what the terms of the self-insurance would be. It clarifies a self-insurance policy, if you will, but clarifies the risks involved to city or personnel. So employees such as you have would fall under the Alaska Workman's Comp, which is what we did, or under the OSHA and Coast Guard inspection, this kind of thing, which we had. Any contractor would be covered by their normal insurance. The hazardous materials. So the way of speaking of a boat in this situation is a tide level relative to the boat if the boat doesn't float. So, which is kind of a situation that's not going to occur, but with that as a theory, so the boat there at that location goes dry at about the 3.5 foot plus tide. So then the tide, if it didn't float at all, tide comes into the back deck, you need a 15.5 foot tide for that to reach the back deck. It's got to go higher yet before anything happens. So that I would need some fuel on boat to run the auxiliary, but that can all be above 16.5 foot tide level. The highest tide last year was 16 foot. So if there's any flotation at all, that puts the hazmat stuff higher still. So I'm just running down the risks. Can that boat collide with another boat? No, it's all by itself. Can't collide. They're gonna tear up docks? No. There's nothing for it to, no city facility for it to smash up except the breakwater. But take a rock, bang it with an empty can, it's the can that gets it, not the rock. It can't actually do any functional damage, to that breakwater. So for sinking, again, you can't sink. So many of the problems that went on with the sound developer, because it sank. So a boat goes down and fuel in the tanks and one thing and another is going to come out through the vent if it doesn't come out any other way. And it's underwater. You can't, makes it difficult to deal with. You got to have divers and things like that. But by the Coast Guard administrative order, that tank, the main tank is empty. So the main tank is flotation now rather than a hazmat reservoir. So it's a positive thing rather than a risk.
So I guess bottom line here, Mike, is what you're trying to do is get us to accept self-insurance.
Yes, the risks are so minimal for anybody or for the city compared to a boat in the harbor. It's much less.
So I don't know if the managers looked into what's required for that, or if anything is required for that, or what that is. What do we require of, you know, a sailor on the harbor for his proof of insurance?
As far as I understand, the issues here are, one, we require an application.
Pardon?
We require an application.
Yeah.
And while you have paid the fee, you have not completed all of the application and never have. The other part of that is we require proof of insurance. Proof of insurance is typically a commercially issued certificate of insurance that should this boat run astray, fly over an island, whatever, they're covered under the certificate indemnifying us of that risk.
Oh, wait.
So do they just write in their number and their agent and we call it good, or do we require a piece of paper from their insurance company that says this boat's covered from January 1st to December 31st, 2019, and what do we require of everybody else? I guess I don't
know the physical answer to that. I don't know if that's a certificate. Tony? Tony's still here?
Yes.
Tony can help me with that.
We normally take a policy name. There are people that offer us a number and we'll bring a policy. Normally we just take that as they have it. We are figuring a way to track them. And we do have someone that is a fisherman that is going to come back next year and show us how the insurance company can email us whenever someone cancels the policy. We'll get an email on that, and that way we'll know, because our code does say you're required to have insurance.
So on the self-insurance thing, Mike, that you're saying, who accepts that? The Coast Guard accepts that, or?
No, the Coast Guard is not interested in insurance, in my experience. We've been, inspected operationally on at least 3 occasions, inspected before operations, been inspected on the beach here once. The insurance question doesn't even arise, because their issue is physical safety. So they may ask you life raft, auxiliary vessels, survival suits, like stuff like OSHA questions. Do you have guards on your belts? Are your pumps working? You know, this kind of thing. So they want your vessel to be physically.
I'm just trying to get at, where did you come up with the self-insurance thing?
Because I realized this Alaska Workman's Comp, we have a state policy of insurance for, you know, the employees on the processing vessel, and that's according to the state law. And so, you know, you got the unemployment, you got the medical, and you got the, you know, wages, just that normal stuff. But it's, and we weren't prepared to do it, but you're allowed to self-insure for those things. I think at one point, maybe still, the city used to have some self-insurance, I believe, or, but I don't know if they still do. That was a while ago.
I think what we're seeking is property and casualty insurance, which is a different thing than workman's comp. Workman's comp is with the state that they pay, he would have to pay premiums to in order to insure his workers. But we're seeking property and casualty.
Right, so.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Burton.
Need some clarification on the direction that we're going here. So, first things first. Are we asking for permission to bring the polar bear back, or is it just implied that it's allowed to come back under the assumption or the terms initially that insurance is provided? I'm trying to figure out if this is a return to the original site, first of all, or if it's not that and it's just the insurance.
I'd like to come to accommodation to where I can return to the original site. Maybe I should say why.
Well, currently the city is telling you you can't unless you have insurance in the form.
Proof of insurance.
Correct?
Is the sticky thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So James, the city's position currently is we're not going to allow that vessel back to where it was at before without insurance and a completed mortgage application.
Well, the application's not.
And if we need to direct management to do other than that, then we need to either tell them to continue to proceed waiting for those items or do it some other way. But they need direction from us if we're going to change. If we're not gonna change, we don't need to do anything. They can stick with their guns.
Right, well, that's how we set this up initially, was making sure that we had insurance so that we didn't run into a financial liability for the city of Cordova down the road, no matter what shape it takes form in. I don't think we can cover all those bases, so. That's how we set it up. I understand the concern. I don't see how we deviate from that right now. Just trying to figure out how to move this along.
What I'm trying to point out is that I don't know what the risk for the city is. I don't see that the city has a risk here. The city is getting paid nonetheless. That only came up, quite recently. But
yeah, I understand what you're saying, Mike, regarding all of that. I guess, and I agree with you that the risk of it damaging city property proper is not real high. But the risk in my mind is what the end result of the sound developer was. Us having to pay to get it out of the harbor, cut it up, get rid of it, dispose of it. The potential, if you disappeared and we were left with that vessel, we'd be trying to do something with it. And that's where we don't want to put the city in that position.
Well, except it's a normal risk with other vessels too. But aside from that, for my late introduction, so to speak, I'm Mike Smith. I've been here since 1973. I don't wander in and out much, except maybe to work out of town or something like that. I have extensive experience processing, miscellaneous boat work, the steel work, the hydraulics, the electrical. I've worked for the city, the school, most of the processors, a lot of time at PISWAC. So it's possible I could die. I mean, but I'm pretty competent to deal with the boat. And another big issue between that situation and the sound developer is that the water goes out almost twice a day, not quite, but pretty much twice a day. If you want to drive to the boat with equipment, you want to take a backhoe or a crane up there, oftentimes there's 2 opportunities a day to do so.
Yeah.
So it's not remotely like sound developer. It's not going to disappear, and I'm saying I won't disappear, but I can't.
I understand. I guess my direction to the manager, my thoughts to the manager and council, chime in where you want to chime in, is that, if we can find a way to, to satisfy the proof of insurance, whether it's self-insurance or a bond or some other way to satisfy that, then, if we can find a way to do that to help. But I agree with Councilmember Burton that we can't be changing the policy or we'll end up with 500 boats down there without any kind of insurance for liability, and we can't be having that either. And I do hope that the harbor gets more, for lack of a better term, strict on proving that they have insurance, because as it looks right now, I could take this form and write whatever company I wanted and whatever policy number I wanted. It doesn't sound like anybody's following up to make sure that that's really covered. And then also that, I could have insurance today and not tomorrow, and there's, I know it's difficult to do all the time but if the insurance companies can provide that, then great. But I just don't think we can change our policy at this point in time. I realize that the boat was there prior to us getting the Tidelands and prior to us getting a Tidelands Borge system in place at all. And it was there, although I believe you were paying the mortgage before. I don't believe we've got a completed application.
Speaking to an earlier comment, the polar bear is one of the best deals that the city never invested in. So they got maximum amount of sales tax number of times, just fuel, sales tax of grocery stores, certain amount of jobs.
But it would only take you disappearing and us having to cut that thing up and dispose of it that would eat up all of that, and then another $200,000.
So the current intention and then part of the need to get it back there when it can be dealt with is because it's starting work towards getting it just independently operable. We were operating it as a processor and then subsequently a support vessel for seining. So get it back up to a standard. I've started looking for a buyer or someone who'd like to use it repurposed. So there's a number of projects I'm working on. With replaced rails, I'm going to tie in the ends of the rails on the side. Got engines and transmissions for repowering on for repowering it and things of that nature. But the repower is the biggest of the projects. There's an area that needs to be reframed, but that's accessible now. And
have you looked into other owners of Tidelands that it might be?
Yes, I have. So, Mr. Randy says his wife would kill him.
I second that. Sorry, Mike.
I was thinking of a different.
Myers says he doesn't have any. I offered to L'Oreal Cole, I said, I'll get rid of the Cavell. It'd be part of the deal. I can delete that boat for you.
Could you haul? Can you haul fish waste?
Pardon me?
Can you haul fish waste?
Yeah, I could haul fish waste. I have to tank it. It doesn't have brine tanks like a.
That's my suggestion for you, maybe.
Pardon me?
That's a possible solution.
Yeah, you can haul fish waste. Anyway, I contacted two people, or one person contacted me. I contacted other people, kind of refining the sales pitch too. The camp boat, work boat, there's still a lot of inside work in it. There's got the 90 kW installed. Got nice bunk houses and staterooms for 20 some. So it's
well, anyway.
So I would like even, a bonding or a variance of some kind. Got these big tides here.
Yeah.
To get it back in place safely.
Again, I would suggest that if the manager can get some proof of insurance somehow with bonding or whatever the attorney and management agrees is acceptable, then that's what I say. But I don't think we can go without compliance. Yeah. And hang around till after the meeting. That's my, as I said, I'm 1 of 7. So go ahead.
I have a question about the Tidelands and Mortgage application. So is that just referring to those Tidelands on the other side of the breakwater, or that the city has? And so theoretically, other vessels could also be moored out there. So there could be other vessels around, to.
Right.
So hence the insurance would be.
Yeah, way back
critical.
70s, the harbor people were talking about using that as a big boat area. If you have dig in a solid dead man anchor thing with some dolphins, then boats can be there. When you're all anchored, then you float and you wander. So then then you're really limited as to the number of people you can have there. But if you have some dolphins, then you can have multiple stalls for bigger boats. So originally I tried to get in the harbor, but there's too much windage and the docks are in too poor conditions, you'll tear it up. So this is the second location that I've been in there, and the harbor hasn't been available to go into. You know, that's the one, the dock where it would be is sideways to the wind.
So that area is zoned though for moorage of vessels, theoretically falls within the vision and plan for that land.
I think it's envisioned as tidelands. I don't think it's envisioned as a moorage facility at this current time, although we have an application for that. I mean, I think really what we're doing here tonight is we're advocating compliance of the existing rules, and Mr. Smith is appealing that he would like to not have to adhere to those rules. And so that's the direction we're trying to get. And as I'm hearing it, we want to continue on with the compliance, whatever methodology we can use to satisfy, for example, the proof of insurance requirement.
You know, I mentioned a while ago, but the bonding reflects risks. Sure, why not? They don't have I'm saying the brokers go for these policies that got no response. I can't, the surveyors want to do a survey, but not there, not now thing, so.
Yeah. I hear you, Mike. I think there may be other options besides traditional commercial insurance to provide this, and we'll look into those options. I understand you're under a tide crunch here in the next few days.
When are our next set of tides, Mike?
Pardon me?
When are our next set of tides?
They Saturday, Sunday are lovely ones.
No,
Do it.
After that.
I haven't seen a tide book for next year yet. I'm thinking it'd be a couple weeks, but I'm not certain of that.
Anyway, anybody have any different direction for the manager?
I advocate for compliance of our current rules.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I advocate for our compliance of current rules.
Same thing I'm saying. If management can be satisfied with the proof of insurance, whether that be traditional, commercial, or otherwise, but there have to be some kind of proof of insurance. Sure. And I'll give you an option afterwards. You've probably already looked into it, but after the meeting, I'll give you an option. Somebody to try to sell to anyway.
What?
Somebody to talk to anyway about getting this thing taken care of. Cordova isn't the only tidelands holder in the country here, so. Anyway, I think, anybody have any different direction for the manager? I think we're all on the same page there with that. So talk to the manager whenever. I don't know what your schedule is, but about some other options for providing that proof of insurance, whether that be bonding or some way to prove self-insurance.
Time limited variance?
Yeah.
At some point in time in the future here, and not to put this on this or complicate this anymore, but with the intensity and the oddness of the storms we have coming through here now, you know, you can see by the open link on the anchor chain, you had dialogue you had on there?
Yeah.
Chain.
Yeah, I had just upgraded my,
No, I understand. I'm not saying that it was undergunned or any of that, but with what we got going on, blowdowns with the, Blackler's building over there, the blowdowns we've had out at 6.5 or at 6.5 mile. You know, all this stuff. The practice long-term of mooring outside on the tide flats, outside the harbor on the tide flats, is questionable in my mind. It's not something we gotta rush into and do any of that stuff, but
yeah,
I don't know that it's a safe situation for the community. I mean, even if you do get this back up and running, or we, you know, if you're doing this, we gotta allow other people to do this, and you end up with 5,000 gallons of fuel sitting out there and it blows itself down.
that's part of my point is to keep the Coast Guard happy.
No, I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying anything. It could be, you know, somebody come in from Chigneck and wanna tie up a boat in the mud flats here, because they don't wanna drive all the way down or whatever. I mean, it has the potential to jack the inlet here, Pat. I mean, we have harbors for a reason. I understand that we have issues with yours being a sail catcher and a big boat, and we don't think the docks would take it. So I'm not putting that on you, but you know, we have harbors to keep things safe. So I don't know, but we ought to have a discussion about what long-term plans are for stuff out there.
Yeah, we can certainly do that at a later time. I think as far as this issue goes,
no, I understand.
Mike can work with the manager on brainstorming some other options for insurance, and if we come up with a solution, hopefully we can. Or maybe we can help them get a surveyor down or something from insurance to get some insurance. But at any rate, council's gonna stick with our policy, and but maybe come up with some other options for proof of that insurance.
Yeah, I'm not looking for long term, I just get there to do some fixing up and get somebody.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, pending agenda. We had said something earlier. Councilmember Jones?
Yeah,
Borough.
yeah, so I guess
resolution.
I would like to instruct staff to come back with us with a resolution against funding further studies on PWS Borough, and take a position that Cordova's not interested in forming a borough.
Councilmember Gard.
I'd like to amend that to just say this study that we've currently been in, and not a borough at this time, if that's the direction we wish to go, but.
Yeah, I think we need to get something on the table, and then we can amend it as.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah, to say yes.
Yes, I think it was seconded last time by Councilmember Weiss. And
What that was?
are you gonna get cut off in 2 minutes, huh?
Yeah, I'm gonna get cut off in 1 minute, so, you ready to turn it back on again?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, James. So.
Are we moving on to another topic?
We're on the pending agenda.
Oh, yeah, okay, so I'll bring up, syntax and bed tax discussion at some point.
I agree.
Okay, I think Alan.
I got all the taxes loaded up.
Okay, well, get them on an agenda. And Susan had said something about January 2nd might not be a good night for a meeting.
How are you guys gonna be? Because
I'll be gone.
I will be unavailable.
Yeah, I think we're all shooting for the 16th.
Yeah.
The next meeting.
Sounds like there's not gonna be a quorum, and there's not gonna be a manager, and there's not gonna be a clerk. And that's Rally the Regions week.
And there's 5 Wednesdays, so we could do the 16th.
And there's 5
and one
Wednesdays.
later.
So we
Yeah, so we're gonna stick with the 16th and then a special after if we need to.
That work for people? And if anything urgent comes up,
We will find a
let
way
us
to
know.
find you guys.
Okay, anything else on the pending agenda? Anything else on the pending agenda? Going once? Twice, so audience participation, comments about anything you'd like.
Not in
Give it
favor
to
of the
us.
borough. So I was happy to see Kenny make that motion.
This, January 16th, we expect to see you here.
Reminded that I neglected to mention 2 things. So the robotics team is going to state and they won the Best Design Award. And given that this is only a 2-year-old program, that's pretty outstanding. Its competition in robotics across Alaska is fierce. So needed to make sure I came and mention that. And also to say congratulations to William Deaton for being nominated by Stanford Council to be a page in DC for the next semester. And as a junior, that's pretty outstanding. Even better than winning deck the halls. So, yeah. So I wanted to mention those things. I appreciate the conversation about the funding of the school district. I'm grateful for the increase, and thank you to Councilman Burton and Councilman Jones and Councilman Weiss for suggesting increases in very specific manners and ways of funding, and for you all for supporting those. Doesn't get us quite where we need to be, but it's a move in the right direction, and we're grateful, or I'm grateful at a time when I know that it does feel like resources are scarce. I encourage you to have faith in us as a community that we will find the resources to pay for these services. It might be hard to figure out which ways we're going to get there, but I see the resources in our community. I think we just have to ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
FYI, I couldn't really hear that last.
Yeah, she was standing up.
Comments were coming from.
Sorry, I'll make them get up to the mic.
Tammy Altermont, I just want to reiterate what Barb said about funding for the schools. Just thank you. Also, with the budgetary process, there were only work sessions and nothing was ever on the agenda, so there wasn't a chance for public comment until tonight at this time. So maybe that could be something that happens sooner along the way, so there is public comment. And I know that the district has requested a joint work session if it's just so that you can understand our budget and understand where we're coming from and what our needs are. Borough, I just want to say I'm not in favor of it. I think that we are the city that we are, and because we have local governance, and also the schools are the way they are because of our local governance and our local community. I'm just not in favor of that. And thank you for your time. I know all the meetings and everything, and just thank you and Merry Christmas.
Chris Bolin, 607 Birch Street. I just wanted to let you know the maintenance department is on track with you on trying to get things fixed up. And then to go off of Jeff's thing there, the deferred maintenance thing is why our fleet is where it's at nowadays. We are all about getting new equipment, and I understand that costs a lot of money and it takes time. And I really greatly appreciate your guys' support and helping us get that and getting big projects fixed and taken care of. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Katrina Hoffman, 301 South 2nd Street. I just wanted to thank you for upholding standards for vessel owners in this community. One way to interpret part of the document provided by the polar bear owner is that up to 300 gallons of hydrocarbons that could be spilled is not really a great risk, and I disagree vehemently. There's a great scientist at NOAA named John Cardona who has shown that petroleum hydrocarbons are more toxic to fish larvae than any other organism that has ever been studied. And this community lives and thrives on the fins of those fish that we catch. And I'm honestly quite surprised that you don't require certificates of insurance from vessel owners, because I secure them in my daily business on a regular basis. And it takes a 2-minute phone call to our insurance company, with whom we have active policies, to get one or to get someone added or that sort of thing. And usually our broker provides a response to us within an hour, if not on the same day. And so anyway, slippery slopes and all, I know that we all have a social compact to each other here to take care of the marine environment as people who benefit from extracting the natural resources there. And thanks for doing that by having good policies.
Mark Fronefel, 813 Woodland Drive. I just want to say on the E911, the first step that the planning department and the city needs to pursue is the addressing for the city of Cordova. That's a gigantic first step that we need to move forward, and that may take some additional funding. So when the request comes in, make sure that you guys support them for that. But that's the biggest first step for E911. And we want that because, you know, we'd hate to not be able to find somebody's house for their kid. Thanks.
My point with the hydrocarbons was that total number would be less than a normal seiner in the harbor, and it would be secured in such a fashion that it can't spill, because it's, no matter what happens, it's above the water level. So I'm not talking about minimizing the risk, I'm talking about eliminating it, which is how the Coast Guard views it as a current situation, because it's not there.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else from the audience? You're hearing none, council comments. We'll start on the phone. James? Is he still on?
I guess just thanks to the audience for, I don't know who all's in it, but we had a lot of public comment over, it's like 20 people that came up to the mic and spoke. I'm glad that people showed up. Thank you for that. Thanks for bearing with us and taking the time out of your evening to be here tonight. It's encouraging when we get a lot of input and support. So thanks for that. And otherwise, Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy New Year, and talk to you again in a couple weeks.
Okay, thank you, James. James?
Got everyone written down that came to speak tonight, but I'll just echo Councilman's comments. Thank you everyone for showing up. It makes these decisions a lot easier. One thing for Wendy Rainey, thank you for. Oh, sorry, James. We don't always get suggested that it can't be a school ask, that we as citizens need to get involved in trying to assist our schools in other avenues, and I appreciate you bringing that up. It's not everyone thinks about it like that. I certainly don't. But thank you for all your efforts. I'd be happy to go over a meeting over your budget anytime. That's it. Merry Christmas.
Councilman Jones.
Dave?
Yeah.
Who's there? Somebody on the line?
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that we have 5 January, so if we do have a second meeting, I'd just like to dodge that fourth meeting of the month when I have my Cordova Electric Board meeting. So if we do have a second meeting, that we have it on the 5th Wednesday.
Yeah, roger that. I think the plan is just to do that if we have something urgent that needs to be done, which there may be something regarding something Sam had, but yeah, I don't think the plan is to do 2 right in a row, so. Thank you, Clay.
Exactly. And also, I just wanted to kind of reiterate or agree with the council's direction to require insurance in the harbor, and with Katrina's comments. It's about financial capability. It's about spreading risk. Even self-insurance generally has a excess liability policy where if there's liability that exceeds the individual or the company's internal financial capabilities, there's someone standing behind, there's resources standing behind that so that the city isn't left on the hook. And we also carry at Cordova Electric many policies. And like Katrina says, it's really just a couple-minute phone call. It's issued usually within an hour, almost always by the end of the day. And they can be structured with your insurance company to renew automatically every year. So, you know, a boat owner doesn't even have to be involved with the process. They can just say until further notice, you know, on or about the first of the year, send another form to the harbor master, and they can keep those on. So anyway, good meeting, and happy holidays.
Thank you, Clay. Councilmember Jones.
Just echo the thanks for everybody coming out and participating. It's a long one. And just hope to see more faces in the future. I know some people are really good about coming, and I see some new faces today. So just keep coming, keep being involved. Get out and vote in March. I hope people support our efforts for the harbor. And yeah, happy holidays and Merry Christmas, and see y'all next time.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yep. Thanks everyone for coming and participating. It's great to see so many faces. And also don't forget to fill out the comprehensive plan online, do the survey, and there's an interactive map. I can't remember what the date is, but it's coming up. So tell your friends and neighbors. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer.
Echoing the same remarks that council said before me, and I believe the deadline's the 31st for the survey, so get out and fill it. And the interactive map, sometimes it's fun to do with a friend to get some ideas going about certain locations. And thank you everyone for coming.
Councilmember Guard.
Again, I'll ask that everybody stay involved so we don't end up in these last minute situations like this. And when we start talking about revenues to fill the gaps so we can fund our schools and we can fund our maintenance and stuff, we need the populace in early and often so we don't then end up driving down a dead end road like we did last time. Leave a hole in our budget where we run into problems like this. So help, please. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. I think my first comment is we need to give out door prizes at the end of the meeting after council comments. Keep everybody here. There's only about a quarter of the people here now that they were here earlier on. But I do thanks everybody for coming. It does help us when we've got input from people, even if you don't speak. Just being here and not speaking against something shows your support. So I appreciate that and thank everybody for that. And I just, you know, remember that the Titanic was unsinkable as well. When, you know, something can never happen, sometimes it does. So we need to keep that in mind as well. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. See everybody, hopefully at a council meeting next year. Thank you.
Declarations for candidacy, January 8th.
Yep. Okay, there being no further business, we will be adjourned. What's that?
Merry Christmas, everyone.
James.
You, James.
Yeah.